Proceedings are resumed. Please be seated. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition, please continue with your debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we took the lunch break, I was commenting on the fact that this bill, and I was saying that the road to hell is often paved with good intentions. The bill has been sterilized in a sense so that it can become more acceptable to people. And that's why I see that, it didn't go so far as to properly define what a domestic partnership was. And there's hardly a mention of same-sex anywhere in there. But I was saying, Madam Speaker, that you cannot get away from the root of why this bill is before this honorable House. And we have to ask ourselves, Madam Speaker, if we are happy as representatives with passing this bill and considering the things that I have pointed out that I think will be side effects of this bill. Are we content as representatives of the people to let it through? But Madam Speaker, I move on to another area that concerns us all as representatives, and that is our constituents. I am not so naive to believe that I don't have constituents who support this bill or what it's trying to do. I know that. And I know that some of them will be disappointed that I didn't support it. But Madam Speaker, I also know that there are those who are happy with the position I'm taking today. And you might ask yourself, well, how do I know that? Madam Speaker, I took the time to conduct, apart from the conversations and the phone calls and the WhatsApp messages, to conduct an online survey using SurveyMonkey, which is an established, well-known survey platform. And I sent out a survey not just to my constituents, but generally. And the survey allowed people to answer a set of questions in relation to this bill and provided me with insight and feedback on their views. And while it can't be called an official poll or survey, what I did notice is that a lot of the people who took the time to answer provided contact details. So I'm now in a position where I could go and verify each and every person. Not each and every person, but a majority of the persons who took the time to complete the survey. And as the member from Savannah mentioned, Madam Speaker, we got a good feedback of how our constituents felt. We got over 600 responses in a couple days, about 3 days. And while that is not an overwhelming majority of Caymanians or persons resident in this country, it was a good enough sample. And I've checked that as well, using what I can remember from my statistics days. And it gave me a good insight into what the feeling was on the ground. Madam Speaker, the first question in the survey was whether or not, do you agree with Section 14 of the Bill of Rights, which says government shall respect the right of every unmarried man and woman of marriageable age to marry a person of the opposite sex and found a family? 72% answered yes, 25% answered no, 2.4% were undecided. Then I sent another one. Well, the second question was, were you aware that the government launched a public consultation on the Domestic Partnership Bill 2020 on June 26, 2020? 62% said no. 37.2% said yes. Next question is, do you know where to send your feedback and views on the Domestic Partnership Bill 2020 for consideration by the government? Now, this is getting back to the point I was talking about earlier, Madam Speaker, where people didn't even know that this was where to send their information, or most didn't know that it was happening. 82% said no, they didn't know where to send their views and feedback. 17.7% said yes. The next question was, do you think you will have had sufficient time to express your views on the Domestic Partnership Bill 2020 to your representative and/or the government prior to the bill going to the Assembly on July 27, 2020 for debate and vote? 66% said no, 22% said yes, 12% said they weren't sure. The next question, do you think there needs to be more public consultation before this legislation is debated and voted on? Madam Speaker, 79% said yes, 17% said no, 4% were undecided. Do you agree with the Domestic Partnership Bill 2020 being gazetted and sent to the legislature for passage without the government first completing a period of public consultation? 81% said no. 14% said yes. 5% weren't quite sure. Do you believe that the government has a political mandate from the Caymanian people to implement domestic partnerships, allowing same-sex couples to be joined? 25% yes, 64% no, 10% undecided. How would you prefer to provide your views and wishes with regard to domestic partnerships? Now, this question you could answer more than one choice, and the choices were referendum, town hall meetings, meetings with my representative, surveys, and questionnaires. "53% said referendum, 19% said town hall meetings, 20% meetings with my representative, 39% surveys, 20% questionnaires. Do you agree with legislation that will allow domestic partnerships between same-sex couples? 69.51% said no. 25% said yes. 5% undecided. Do you agree with the matrimonial causes law and the maintenance law applying to the dissolution of a domestic partnership in the same way that they apply to marriage? 58% no, 26% yes, undecided 15%. Do you agree that our legislation should recognize same-sex marriages and partnerships entered into in other jurisdictions? 72% no, 24% yes, 4% undecided. Do you agree with Cayman Islands registered ships having the authority to create domestic partnerships? 67% no, 18% yes. 16% undecided. Do you think this legislation conflicts with the Cayman Islands Constitution? 68% yes, 21% no, undecided, 11%. And this is important, Madam Speaker, because we've talked about this one. Many people have discussed this in their debates. Do you agree with persons between the age of 16 and 18 being able to enter domestic partnerships without parental consent via the courts? 87% no. 8% yes. 6% undecided. Do you agree with persons who have not yet graduated from high school being able to enter a domestic partnership? And I have to guess this one because that page got lost, but 80, not guess, but I'm looking at the graph now. About 87% no. 15% yes. And about 10% undecided. So, Madam Speaker, I got sufficient feedback through this survey and also through discussions with my constituents, discussions with the church leaders, discussions with the general public, discussions via messenger, WhatsApp, email correspondence sent to me. And all of that led me in one direction. The country is not yet prepared to support this legislation. And that was clear to me. And as I said at the beginning, Madam Speaker, this is not about my personal views on this or any of our personal views on this. This is about the people's views and the people's wishes. And we cannot expect to impose anything on the people of this country and not give them the opportunity to properly weigh in and give their feedback before we move forward. And I would strongly urge the government sorry, to rethink their position on this bill moving forward here today. It is not too late to put the brakes on, because what we're doing here today is against the wishes of the people of the Cayman Islands. Not me. Don't worry about me. The people I represent, the people we all represent. Madam Speaker, that's not it. Madam Speaker, I was looking for a copy of a press release that just came out from the Cayman Ministers Association, and I'd asked for a copy to be printed, but I think the wrong thing came back to me. I think I must have sent the wrong email. Okay. Thank you to the member from Georgetown Central. No, that's not it. Let me just read that. With your permission, Madam Speaker, could I read this press release and I will provide the copy afterwards?
Absolutely, yes. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Response to the Domestic Partnership Bill. The executive of the Cayman Ministers Association, CMA, wishes to record their disagreement with the Domestic Partnership Bill. Our position has always been that we cannot support any legislation which goes against the teachings of Scripture. While we understand the efforts to satisfy the directives of the Court of Appeals to specifically cater for some same-sex unions, we cannot support this directive because it is contrary to the teachings of the Bible regarding marriage, the family, and human sexuality. God is the one who began and sustains the whole process of human existence. He is the one who created us. He knows what is best for us. He ensured this information was communicated to us through His Word, the Bible. We, the executive of the CMA, are convinced that what God has stated in His Word is in the best interest of the well-being of the people of the Cayman Islands. To go against this is to jeopardize our Christian heritage and the important family structures and beliefs that have been responsible for the stability and progress that the Cayman Islands have enjoyed. Madam Speaker, that is the position of the CMA. I think we've finally now settled what their position is. I know there was some back and forth yesterday with regard to that. And it reflects, we have to think deeply about this, not just the executive's position, you know. They are speaking on behalf of their congregations. Those ministers wouldn't put out a press release if they didn't have the support of their congregations. And while, thank you, while it is, you can get this to her, it is their responsibility to represent the views of their congregations and our responsibility to represent the views of all people, we have to represent the majority. And that is what I have to say. I know that people in my constituency wanted this to pass today and they wanted me to support it, and I couldn't, because I have to represent the majority, not the minority wishes. I wish I could please everybody, but I can't. I am elected to represent what the majority wish. And I took the time, Madam Speaker, to go out and find out what that majority view was. And I'm comfortable. I am also comfortable in myself that if I am wrong, I will know next election, next May. I will know. The people will decide who they want to lead them next time around. But I have to do my job, my responsibility, to the best of my ability, without thinking about the next election. I have to represent my constituents to the best of my ability and do what I think is in their best interest. And today, not supporting this bill is in their best interest. There has not been sufficient consultation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what is the role of this legislature? What is our role? The Premier suggested yesterday that if we didn't support this bill, we would be derelict in our responsibilities. He might not use those words, but that's what he suggested. Sorry? So, Madam Speaker, I want to say that I think passing this bill will make us irresponsible representatives. Madam Speaker, Parliament exists for one single purpose: to create laws that reflect the wishes of the people. Peace, order, and good governance. Before humankind had laws, we had rules. We had general understandings. That's the origin of laws. It was known, established, that you do not kill, you do not steal. Those understandings evolved into laws, the laws that we live by today. But they came from the people, the community. They decided this is how we want to live. Every 4 years, Madam Speaker, the people of this country decide who gets the honor and the privilege to come here to make, repeal, or amend those laws. But we cannot do it without consulting them. We cannot turn the equation upside down on its head and say, I am now Lord and Master and you must do as I say. We cannot do that. That is not representation. That is not democracy. Democracy is when the people choose a commoner to come here and represent them. The leader of the opposition taught me that. I didn't know what House of Commons meant, until he and I had a discussion about it. Commoners, we are commoners, representing the common man.
And you regretted everything, I'll tell you something.
Madam Speaker, for us to put ourselves in a position where we are now telling the people of this country that we are doing this and you're not stopping us. And then we went through a process where the people didn't even get a chance, a proper chance, to influence the outcome of this bill. If we had done that, maybe it wouldn't be so contentious. Maybe when the people's wishes were embedded into this bill, it would have been acceptable to not just us, the legislators, not just the common man in the communities, but the church leaders, the religious leaders of this country, who I put on the same level as myself. They have a responsibility too, and they lead and they direct. We've chosen them to be leaders in this community as well, and we can't just ignore them. Cayman was built on our Christian traditions. Our success story, he hath founded it upon the seas. That's the root of it. That's where it comes from. That comes from the Bible, the Holy Bible. We cannot forget that. If we start to forget that, we're going to lose our way. So, Madam Speaker, I certainly, based on what I have said here today, can't support this bill. And the threat of what we worked so hard to get, that we went to the UK and we negotiated changes to give us more autonomy, more authority in our own country. The threat that that will be yanked away because we want to promote self-determination, exactly. And we want to be masters of our future and our domain. And we want to do things our way, the way that has brought us to where we are today. For that threat to be dangled over us now, that we're not going to get the constitutional amendments, and for any of us to support that argument, then we don't deserve those amendments. We don't deserve that authority and that autonomy. If we can't be men and women and stand up here today and stand up for our country and say, no, you're not going to push us around. You're not going to make us forget about where we are, who we are, and where we came from. If they want to take them away, then take them away. Because, like the leader of the opposition, I'm not going down on my knees. I bow before God. But those are my personal feelings, Madam Speaker.
Tell them so what?
Those are my feelings. But one thing I will never do, and in keeping my promise to my mother, my children, is make politics change me. Whether I pay a political price for that later on, I will have to accept that. But I'm not changing here today.
You think you're the only one that lost something, yeah? All that's going to do is, at some stage,
Madam Speaker, I hear discussions about the rule of law, and I hear about the courts having a say in what we do over here. Madam Speaker,
the Attorney General coming next week, I found him up about that for rule of law.
I do not subscribe to that
You know, he got
belief.
Him and Alden is twins in a bucket.
Madam Speaker, Parliament has the power through legislation both to protect and promote the rule of law and to also undermine it. be it consciously or inadvertently. Those are not my words. A.V. Dicey. So we have the authority to decide what goes in this country, what our laws reflect. We have the authority given to us by the people, and that is the root of democracy. And I am not going to disrespect that. So I hope everyone understands clearly why I cannot support this bill. I am looking at the longer-term effects of what is to come, what this bill will introduce into this country. And like the leader of the opposition, I wish we could find a way to please everybody. But until that day comes, I have to please God, my constituents, not myself. That is my position. We are all responsible for our own individual positions. I'm not preaching to anyone. I'm not coercing anyone. I'm not trying to scare anyone. We all climb out on the limb on our own. If it gets too heavy, it breaks. Let's not carry some extra weight out there with us, because when that limb breaks with you, you're probably going to be the one to get hurt, because whoever's holding on with you is going to fall on top of you. Go out on the limb on your own, if you have to go out on the limb. Madam Speaker, I want to thank all honorable members for listening to me. I want to thank you as well. Yeah, I was going to lay this, Madam Speaker, with your permission. Thank you.
Please proceed.
And I hope that, Madam Speaker, that my words got through to someone today. We don't have to do this today. We can take a quick pause and discuss this some more amongst ourselves, because I'm confident that the people of the Cayman Islands are not happy with what we're doing here today. They're not. Don't take silence for consent, because there's a silent majority out there who is listening and watching, and they're not pleased. It is not too late to fix this. It is not too late to do what is right by the people of this country. Throwing this on the people now, without them having had their say in this, is wrong, and I cannot be party to that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Minister of Environment, Health and Environment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure for me to get up on my birthday to, I was dreading this day. I was hoping to be able to debate another day, but it doesn't seem like there'll be another day available. I want to thank all the members for their birthday wishes, all my constituents and people throughout the country. I want to thank my family for the precious meal that they sent for us to share here today. My mother, my wife, who helped to cook the good food, some good conchs and turtle and salt beef rundown and Cayman-style beef, and member from Bordentown West wishes to thank my mother, his next door neighbor, and I was asked to, the members of the House has asked me to have a birthday every month. But I declined. This is probably the lightest part of the moment in my speech. I want to thank the ministry for the beautiful card and cake that they sent down. Thank you, Chief Officer, for organizing this, and my PA, Ms. Sharon. Thank my daughter for that beautiful letter she sent to me. Almost felt like reading it, but I would probably cry. This is I struggle, like many members in here. I think most of us in here, or 19 persons that were elected, believe in fairness and choice and opportunity for all. And I struggle with this matter. I thought I'd pray first, otherwise it could get worse. My contributions on this bill was after consultation with my constituency. Messages received, calls, visits. Anyone that contacted me with, I met with them. I didn't hear from everyone, but tried to get as much literature out as possible. As representatives, we would hope to be able to hear from everyone, and I apologize if I didn't get your voice. So I can't say that I heard from 100% of the people in my constituency, but I think I've heard from the majority of them. I don't think anyone has heard from 100% of their constituency, but we try. Father God, who know all things from beginning to end, unto you we give all the glory, honor, and praise. God, we thank you for love, for life, for wisdom, your faithfulness and your mercy and grace towards us. Your children, may your wisdom remain our portion today, Lord. Lord, give us a heart of understanding, a heart that is pure, full of hunger and thirst for you, a heart of obedience, courage, determination, self-control, and a spirit to discern good and evil at times. Father, guide us through these proceedings today, that the right thing is done for mankind. In Jesus' name, amen. When I got elected, 2017, I was called to help form the government, and in my usual nature, when I was planning to run for election, I called on my people. About a couple hundred people gathered at the White House in 2016, and I asked them, how would you like me to run in this election? Would you like me to run with this team or that team, or would you prefer me to run as an independent? And we took a survey that night after I fed them. No, not turtle meat. But the results came out as that I should run as an independent, and I followed their advice. Once again, when I got elected, a few months later, I was called to form the government, thankfully, by the Honorable Premier, Mr. Alden McLaughlin. And I called a meeting with my constituents within 3 hours. Obviously, it wasn't COVID time then, so we could actually call a meeting quickly and gather. and mounts up amongst each other, as they'd say. And you know, I asked the people, you know, look, do you want me to sit on the backbench, or do you want me to join the government and be a part of the conversation, be at the table to help make decisions to guide this country forward? They trusted, and they told me, work with the government, work with the PPM, work with the coalition. West Bay, Georgetown, and otherwise, Kim and Brock, Little Kim. So it should be of no surprise that I get up here and try to be the voice of the voiceless for my people of Bordentown East. I'm the face of the faceless. And I can't just ignore that. I stand here today not proud of this bill of a movement I am somewhat forced to debate. In recognizing I have an elected and constitutional responsibility, and it's not necessarily about the freedom of choice. No one wants to impede that, but more about the forcible nature in which these things come about. How do you feel as legislators that we have to decide on something that we know most in the country does not support, understand, or care for? Madam Speaker, all day long, my WhatsApp is running hot, full of disappointment, full of worry, full of concern for the Christian values and principles this beautiful country we're built on. One knows that when all seems dim, I am one for sure who doesn't shy away from my love for God and reading His Word at a time when some frowned on it. But my belief tells me it helped us through a pandemic and still helping us. Madam Speaker, I know how to be faithful, loyal, and dependable.
Yes, sir.
But today, Madam Speaker, my loyalty, my faithfulness, and dependability lies with God and my people as the pressures mount up as to whether this bill passes or fails. As said before, with every bill brought before this honorable House, there will be two oppositions: the lunatics that favor it and the fools that oppose it. Madam Speaker, if we are being honest about this, as a country, we have tried our best never to get this point in debating same-sex domestic partnership bill. When most feel we have been put in a corner and now have to act on behalf of our people. And we must all ask ourselves, as Ben Franklin did, is an ounce of prevention better than a pound of cure? Madam Speaker, some are saying it's too early. We need time to digest the bill. I can humbly say, no matter how much time we got, we would still have trouble with this legislation.
Yes, sir.
And to add to it, and especially at a time of hurricanes, earthquakes, burning landfill, and COVID-19, just a lot going on for everyone mentally. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the government for the comfort in this being a vote of conscience.
Yes, sir.
This is very important to our people. Very, very important. I thank you. Madam Speaker, I intend to take that conscience seriously. Madam Speaker, we are here today to make a serious decision on whether we should vote yes to follow the Court of Appeals advice on giving persons whom are willing to partner up in a same-sex partnership an avenue to do so. Madam Speaker, when I am asked to make such a decision as an MLA for Bordentown East, I first ask, does God approve of this? How will this affect our birth rate and procreation? How will the church view this? How does the people in my constituency view this? What is the mandate from them? What is the majority of the people in the Cayman Islands' views on all of this? If this law passes, is it benefiting the majority of Caymanians? Madam Speaker, whatever anyone wants to do at 3 a.m. in the morning in their bedroom, that is their business. I have never been one to hate anyone or anything. I believe I am a loving person by nature and very caring, I'm also told. But what I am more concerned about is the minority wants to trump the majority, and they will use whatever powers they have to bully us into submission. Madam Speaker, what I want to know is when will our rights be respected? And because we were not comfortable, like most in the country is saying that we're bad people, and we shouldn't exist. Will they team up with social media against us with our right to choose but want us to support their rights? Something is not adding up here. What I want to know is, will they support the rights of all Caymanians getting a job in this country? Will they support the rights of Jack bathing on any beach without provocation? Yes. Will they support that every Caymanian deserves a home? Will they support the rights that the Native American Indians have in Florida for us? These are some questions. My whole problem is not about being gay or lesbian or otherwise. As I recognize, God gave us the ability to choose how we want to live, and this started from Adam and Eve with the forbidden fruit choice. And yes, I do care about people's happiness, but I care more about procreation. Amen. So, Madam Speaker, people can always make a choice. Well, why does it seem such a small community? The respect of my right as being a heterosexual, attracted to the opposite sex, and to have my opinion, what I like or dislike. I am being discriminated for trying to protect the sanctity of marriage, being primary for procreation. Madam Speaker, the word itself means production of offspring, reproduction, to satisfy the innate biology urge that usually is present, the urge to keep us breathing and producing more organisms, to keep the species, the human species, from dying out. That's why we copulate. Why else?
You got some good offspring, boy.
Plenty of them. And according to the UN Population Division, the replacement fertility is the total fertility rate at which women give birth to enough babies to sustain the population level, about 2.1 children per woman. In most developed countries, the TFR, or total fertility rate, has to be greater than 2.0, as the sex ratio at birth has mostly been favorable to boys, 105 boys per 100 females born, therefore adjusting all these factors if the replacement level fertility comes to 2.1. The effects in long term of zero population growth can be achieved when the birth rate of a population equals the death rate, as the fertility is at replacement level and birth and death rates are stable, a condition also called demographic equilibrium. We are in trouble now as a country with our 1.8 average. Madam Speaker, and about Cayman's concerning 1.8, I can only humbly comment to you about this whole thing. Since we are debating this on my birthday week, is that I have a very special connection with the moon. I was born in July 1969, and everybody knows what happened then. The first man went on the moon in the month I was born, July 1969. The thing about the moon is that we have more energy. We feel more extroverted and connected to our partners, and have more interest in sex due to our gravitational pull of the moon and Earth and the consequent energy released during this time. If you didn't know, a full moon increases women's sexual desire. The lunar cycle seems to affect women of all shapes and sizes. So I'm just saying, pay attention to the moon and bring up these totals. And by the way, this is not irresponsible. This is about saving a nation. Madam Speaker, I am for equal rights and justice, fairness, rights of choice, because we can't do anything about person's choice. They will do it anyhow. But what I am most against is the bullying nature in which most of this sex conversation takes place. The tactics of the external forces causes great concern on a small country like ours and all over the world, holding us ransom at times. If you don't do this, you won't get this behavior. Madam Speaker, the word bullying in itself means to self-harm. If the majority of our people are saying no, then it will harm us. To intimidate, threatening to do in order of counsel, then you are intimidating. Or coerce, trying to persuade an unwilling person to do something by using force or threats, that's when being coerced. The word bully was first used in 1530, and we should all say no to any form of bullying. The churches feel bullied, the heterosexuals feel bullied. People are scared to speak out as they see how vicious these groups are in castigating persons who are against their desires, and then they wonder why most people are upset by this very nature. Oh, they will castigate me and say everything about me because it seems I'm not supportive. I can tell you, if you have not heard already, I have never hurled hate at any person. I don't have any hate in me. Yes, like everyone else, new things and changes are hard for me to swallow. But I am not being a liar to myself. My own children will say to me, the legislators are making too much of this and we should just approve it. Maybe we are. But I'm trying to shed the light so we can recognize that we're getting ourselves to what we're getting ourselves into. And as quoted, do you have enemies? Well, good. That means you have stood up sometime in life for something, and as bad as that seems, it can get worse. And as the Apostle Paul put it, not many of you are wise by human standards, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. Madam Speaker, our children deserve protection from us. They deserve protection. And you know what? I wrote this speech myself. Amen. Right? I can't write less than 11 pages. After 11, I become dim. Our children need protection from this lifestyle until they are at age to decide for themselves. We don't know what our children will choose to do. We don't, but at least we can't shove this in their faces in the manner some would like. Teaching it in schools, public displays that confuse the heck out of them. Madam Speaker, it is important for us to protect our children's innocence. Because when children lose their innocence too young, it does more harm than good. How do we even talk to our children about homosexuality? We need to give our children a solid foundation before the topic of homosexuality is addressed. We can equip our children to know the Creator's design for relationships and marriage and sexuality. And that's all we can do. It's their choice after that legal age. We get that. But the real trouble is, K-Man, if we don't have this conversation, someone else will. Or already has. And you may not like what they have told them. So, Madam Speaker, saving our children is what I'm about. In the 1970s, Madam Speaker, a woman known as beauty pageant winner of Miss Oklahoma, and celebrity singer Anita Bryant, ran a Save the Children campaign to repeal the local ordinance in Dade County, Florida, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. Ms. Bryant claims the ordinance discriminated against her right to teach her children biblical morality, and she successfully defeated the ordinance and caused other groups throughout the USA to successfully overturn such ordinances. Anita Bryant's aim was to combat a movement started in 1969, here we go again, where the gay community fought back and sparked a protest in New York known as the Stonewall Riot. And it marked the beginning of a political movement for the gay rights over 50 years ago. But back then, it was more focused on personal liberation and visibility than on access to institutions such as marriage. So this motivated Ms. Bryant to champion this cause as a mother. Whilst we stand by and see the many changes throughout the world, research has shown that even after same-sex marriages were passed in some countries, gay marriages didn't go up, but found that heterosexual marriages went down. My presentation today is not about stopping anyone from choice, but more about protecting children and the sanctity of marriage. Traditionally, marriage and procreation has long been connected to one another, and some may dismiss the true meaning of this, but there is no accident that the countries that have legalized or are considering legalizing same-sex marriage have some of the lowest fertility rates in the world. For instance, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Canada have birth rates that hover over around 1.6 children per woman, well below the replacement fertility rate of 2.1. So the first gay marriage was in 2004 in Massachusetts in the USA, some 35 years since the first movement. And they have 350 million people in the US. The European Union has said the same-sex marriage is not a right. So with our 65,000 population, don't expect a freight train to give acceptance through our communities like a bullet. These things take time, and one ought to remind themselves that they are the minority trying to affect the lives of the majority of a reasonable country who really shows no hate to gays or other people's choices. This behavior has been happening, Cayman, for a long time. And every one of us has known someone that is gay, and we love them just the same. Can you imagine, Madam Speaker, only and just in recent 2014, just the other day, did New York, Illinois, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, amongst other states, made gay marriages legal, and only about 50% of the great United States was in favor of this. These are states right next door to us. Madam Speaker, not everybody will be happy with what I'm saying here today, but I've been under pressure all my life. You understand? So, In the UK, our mother country, the Gay Marriages Act was only passed in 2014, just the other day, with a very divided parliament, just like it is here, no different. No everybody fussing about. And same-sex marriage in Northern Ireland only became legal just last year in October 2019. So don't make us feel or seem so out of the fashionable. You know? So, Madam Speaker, where does it stop? Do we go straight for polygamous or polyandry relations?
Exactly.
Maybe there's a reason why Solomon was known as the wisest man. I know some would like this. Or should we ask about incestuous behaviors or bestial actions or other non-traditional relationships? This is the real question, Madam Speaker. School curriculums educating about same-sex choice, as done in the UK now, is just a lot for us. Just a lot for these island people to consider so quickly.
I can speak about that.
It will have an impact by these special rights. Because I am hesitant, it's seen that I'm denying your rights. Let me mention a few things happening in the world. In the UK, they had a gay pride march going across this grandmother's street. And she mentioned it to the police, and she was told to bite her lip, or she would be charged with hate crime speech. A preacher was on the streets of Scotland, and he made a comment about what the scripture said about homosexuality, and was fined £1,000. A grad student at the Georgia University had her Christian beliefs and voiced them only to be told by the college that she needed to get counseling because her thoughts were not right. Another Christian family was denied from adopting children because of their views on homosexuality. A student was suspended from school because they made a comment about homosexuality. One pastor spoke out on a Sunday morning, very real, that could happen here, at a sermon, and he was reported and thrown in jail. In Canada, one was threatened to be sent to a mental institution for speaking his mind. So we do have to worry. The police in Scotland was banned for handing out the Gideon Bible, and it said it was homophobic information. What I'm saying is, once you make a right for something, everyone has to go along with it, even children. Every church, every believer will be affected in some way. So let no one say you will not be affected. Not if, when this is put into law. The letter from the Ministers Association, they understand the predicament we are in the letter they sent with the courts of appeal. They understand what's going on. They understand the challenge we have. It's a difficult decision. But I always say, if a person is going to try to hurt me, and if they want to put me in jail or castigate me or do whatever, if they want to put me in jail, I'm still in Cayman. You know? Still here.
The biggest population,
And I'll probably know all of them up there.
biggest population is up there.
So, Madam Speaker, 3 questions I want to ask. Will this go away whether the bill passes or not? Number 2, will homosexuals stop being in love with each other? Number 3, are we the last country to put these rights into law? The answer is no to all. To all of them. When I grew up, Madam Speaker, I grew up in a Christian home, obviously, like most in Cayman. But I had to go to 2 churches, Adventist, and I had to go to Presbyterian, which is united now. I was deemed, as a teenager, they wanted me to become a youth pastor. Many don't know. It was Scotland you would have to go to, And I hadn't traveled before. I didn't even have a passport. So I was scared, just a little island boy. So I then went to get a job at the airline, and when I got that job, I was so happy to get it, you know. After working construction for a couple of months, I realized that the sun wasn't in favor of me. So I said I wanted to wear a necktie. That's what they told us when we were growing up. One poor little one. And, you know, when they gave me the first roster, I didn't even know what the word roster was. They gave me the first shift. I looked at it. I had to work on Sunday from 5 a.m. to 2. I cried for 2 days because I could not go to church. So I used to beg the supervisors, you know, if I could work a little extra hours after so I could go to church at 11, leave church by 12, take an hour break, and drive all the way back. Or hitch a ride, because I was hitching a ride them days. So, yes, I've been a follower. I'm a sinner like everybody else. Lord knows. All kind of sins. Got them rocked up. I pray every day. And every one of my children, I try to teach them the Christian principles. See the light. Every one of them got to go Sunday school. Every one of them got to go Sabbath school. And I try to teach them the right way. I teach them the right way, and they still tell me, at 17 and 12 years old, Daddy, you need to give people the right. You know, so what can I do about that? I taught them well. So I say that to say that my hope for all mankind, and one that brings me comfort, is the opportunity of the thief on the cross. The thief on the cross had. So everyone can be saved. That is my hope. That's why I have such an open mind and respect everyone. At the last minute when he was dying, he realized that being a thief was wrong and not right in the sight of God. And he asked for forgiveness by saying, "Remember me in the kingdom of heaven." This simple act of faith saved his soul. So I remain hopeful that persons will see the blessings we have received from believing, as I am also reminded of the word that says, "Judge ye not." Who are we? Please remember, this could be one of your own children that you may continue to love and hug. I thank the legal team for the work they did on this bill. And if there's anything to mention about this bill itself, it is better than what could have been worse, as the member from Newlands echoed to in some sense. And does have protections for marriage officers and etc. And, well, 16 years old is too young, etc. In closing, I want to say again, I got no mandate from my people to vote yes on this, and it's not one of the government's priorities. It wasn't listed. We are a blessed country. We need to thank God for his many blessings and mercies on us. We really need to. Right? I was told I could speak my mind, and that's what I'm doing. Am I doing a bad job? Oh, thank you, opposition.
And don't make nobody release you from your collective responsibility and tell you how to vote.
Mr. Madam Speaker, this is a moment of truth. This is a moment of truth. It is not a comfortable position for me, for a government that I love, for a premier that I admire, who has taught me so much things. This is a very It's a very difficult time. And no, I won't walk like the minister from Savannah, like the member from Savannah. I'm not going to walk. It's gone too far now. My constituents is willing to wager their bets. Right? This is what they tell me. Whilst I respect this government and admire the fantabulous job and has great support from the public after our handling of COVID-19, the pandemic, but I have to follow my constituents' instructions. Why am I here? I told you how I started. Instructions from them. I can't, with good conscience, after reading over 100 Bible verses, to be a hypocrite to support this bill against my constituents' wishes, who sent me here, and as Bob Marley said, guiltiness will rest on my conscience. It won't rest on mine. May God bless you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the member for West Bay North.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I stand here today in no way or form to judge someone because of their lifestyle. Plain and simple. I stand here today to discuss a bill that has been brought here before us that is so short on legs in the public's eye. To put it, as one person said, not even the snake could look up the tight shoelace. Madam Speaker, everyone knows that I work with a lot of young people. And over the last 10 or 15 years, I had to sit down and try to count how many, and I came up with 13 young people, Madam Speaker, that I had. They've sat down, talked to me, tell me where they think or where they knew their sexual preference was. And it was not, to them, they thought they were not normal. People were making them feel that they were not normal. They had to go and tell their parents, Madam Speaker, and it was me they came to. I can bring parents that could vouch for the way I handled it. Do I understand? Not fully. But is one thing that I've seen, Madam Speaker, is that when they have been honest with their family members and with their church, I have seen things go better mentally for people who feel that they are attracted to the same sex. A lot of these young people, Madam Speaker, have gone on to good jobs, hold good positions. So I, Madam Speaker, am not able to judge. That is between them and their God. That's between them and their families. Nothing to do with me. But Madam Speaker, there's two things that gives me cause right off the top of this bill. And there's too many questions, Madam Speaker, for us to just jump into this. And then the behavior that has gone on, like the Minister for Health just said, almost like a bullying thing. And this is not the first time, Madam Speaker, The last time this was rearing its head, we had another comedic another governor that her daughter put on some big thing at the West End for gay people. Not one person went down there and protested, and I was proud of my country. Not one of us went down there and protested. 2 days later, the church people had something at the Lion Center. Over 7,000 people showed up. And you know what irked me, Madam Speaker? And I counted them. There were 11 people out front, of which 3 I knew, that I was friendly with. And I spoke to them after the fact. Madam Speaker, waving a rainbow flag and saying things. Some of them said some rude things to some old ladies that were going in. I witnessed it personally. And Madam Speaker, that's why I went to the 3 that I knew. And I said, if you are calling this a cause, you did your cause no good. Because people that are middle of the pack, like myself, that don't understand, don't judge, but tell you to keep it a certain way, you're going to chase us over to the side to fight against you, because those 3 old ladies did not deserve what was said to them. And once again, Madam Speaker, you see it in a subtle, diplomatic way, and that's the bullying that's going on. The public has said to me that they have heard things like, oh, it's called scaremongering, Madam Speaker. If you all don't approve this, they're going to force us to go independent. If you don't approve this, they're going to force something worse on us. And if you don't, I even heard the latest one I've heard that if you don't pass this, they're going to call early elections. Madam Speaker, the Premier may be many things, but he's not an idiot. He is very far from that. Make me tell you that. Madam Speaker, why? Why do we have to go through all this? For many years, I've heard Cayman will never be given a better constitution because England is not going to allow us to be like Bermuda. I got elected here in 2013, and I started to ask individuals, where is that? No one could show me that in writing. I asked for that for 6 years to try, did you hear it come out of anyone's mouth? No one could tell me this, Madam Speaker. But I've been hearing that even before I got elected. You all will never be, we will never get a constitution like Bermuda's. But Madam Speaker, lo and behold, and maybe it's the beginning of a trend. Constitutional change was brought to us, but there was one thing that was done the wrong way. There was not enough public consultation. But because of some of the good things in it, we voted for it. I did. Did not like the fact that there was not enough consultation, and I voted for it. I had some very close friends who took me apart for voting for it on the principle that it was no public consultation. Madam Speaker, on this bill, there's been no public consultation. If that's what they're calling public consultation, it's a joke. So you ask yourself, one, why fear-mongering? Why no public consultation? Madam Speaker, I've heard the leader of the opposition talk about the anti-bullying law they've been sitting on, pharmacy law, public life, health law, public libraries, sexual harassment, I think it's something about the insurance law. The one that gets to me the most, Madam Speaker, the Fair Employment Opportunity Commission. Everybody's talking about rights. And they're rushing this law in. But yet, the law to keep us off of the blacklist could not be rushed in time, and now we're on a blacklist. But this one is being here on time. Madam Speaker, once again, it makes me wonder. But I will go back to that Fair Employment opportunity. You hear about the order in council. Madam Speaker, all these things. I am not going to stand here very long because I've heard a few speeches that were really good here today on both sides. But the Minister for Health and the Deputy Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of the Opposition, those were three that stood out in my mind. And the practicality of the member from Northside, as usual, was on key. So I don't have much. I am unlike a lot of people in here who like to beat their gums and hear their own voice. My voice ain't very good. Didn't go high enough, didn't stay low enough. So I'm trying to get off of this table as quick as possible and say what I have to say, because the world knows I am not supporting this bill. There was no need for anyone to try to approach me. I met with 6 or 7 preachers in West Bay, all with the West Bay congregations. And there was a very beautiful debate amongst them and myself. There was one young preacher who kept talking about the rights. The rights. And my question was, what rights have been taken away? And it had me in a little funny position thinking, Madam Speaker, until a friend of mine who is gay, and he's been in a relationship for 13 years with his partner, and he said something to me, that he went to a lawyer and a notary public, and they had a letter drawn up, and that if anything happens to him, his partner can pull the plug. The property that they have, go to the other one, if the other one, they got it all drawn up in a simple piece of paper. He says, all you have to do is to change one law where something is done with the pension. Just a simple thing. But to go through all of this, Madam Speaker, and to think that England would turn around and force things down the throat of the people that don't want something. In 2016, I stood right down here, Madam Speaker, and I looked across and I said, please have a referendum on this. I was totally ignored. I heard the member from Savannah asked the same thing for a referendum. Let's put it to the people. It was voted down. It was voted down. Madam Speaker, why is there a fear amongst us to take it to the people? True. If you do public consultation, make everyone put their 5 cents worth into this, then you give them the choice. Then we'll see where it is. There's no argument. There's no need for this back and forth. But, Madam Speaker, when I walked across the floor because of the port and what I had contacted my constituents, I heard the stuff on the street. He only contacted those people that he knew was against the port. Well, this time, Madam Speaker, I contacted no one. But I had 244 until midday today, and I got the 245th person that contacted me either by email, text, WhatsApp, or straight phone call. 245. Of that 245, 10 say, look, man, just do something and get these people to shut up. Hopefully they'll go back to their country. Sorry. We have our own gay people that are looking for this. So we can't just do something just nilly-willy. 9 straight up told me, yes, we support this. The rest, Madam Speaker, clearly said in no way or form, no. And I kept saying to some of them, but we have to do something. But like I said, when my friend who's gay called me and told me this is what he and his partner of 13 years, whatever, was done, I said, maybe that's something we can look at. I asked the great Attorney General, what is it? And I am sure we can find something, but to do it this way, where there's no public consultation. And I think, Madam Speaker, when the Constitution was done, was it 68%? Are you the numbers, man? 66.26% voted no. Why is it that you're expecting 14 of us inside here, 18 of us to say yes? No, that's not right. Take it back to the people. Madam Speaker, take it back to, they put us here, it's our responsibility to take it back to them. Madam Speaker, I want to get back in wrapping up to one thing. You know what's hurting Caymanians now? Besides losing their homes, insurance rates, bank rate, jobs, fair employment opportunity. Where is that? We're rushing this in here, but this has been on the table now for how long? Too long. It's easily over 2 years. Madam Speaker, I now have, and one good thing, you can save WhatsApp messages and text messages. Caymanians going back to work after being off of work for a while, and you hear them saying, and they've never had a problem, but now that companies have to cut, you have people on work permits doing them all sorts of evil and talking evil and so forth and making their job life miserable. Where's the defense for our people? This country, Madam Speaker, for so long, they just started to use this phrase, Caymankind, in the last couple of years. This has been our history. We didn't have to bring up no fancy word. And that Caymankind, Madam Speaker, for too long, we've opened our arms, and when we open our arms, we're getting stuck from people. Everybody feels comfortable with their own, so they bring their own. The minute you have, the worst thing to do is to be a Caymanian in this country at times. Madam Speaker, our own Caymanian people are guilty. They love to hold a work permit or a contract over somebody's head at the detriment of us because they can't do it to us. Madam Speaker, I'm the first to say that some of us have made us look bad with their laziness, with their work Monday through Friday, and they get paid, and then you don't see them the next day or whatever. Those type of things that make, but Madam Speaker, that's not all of us. And in every country you go, you have the same like those. But because they use it as a crutch here, Madam Speaker, to hold us back. Where is that commission on fair unemployment? Talking about rights. Let us discuss the rights of Caymanians first in this country and the rights of Cayman under the UK. Let us get those clarified and cut and dry, then we can go on to other stuff like this that are just not that important, Madam Speaker, because guess what? Growing up, we knew who the three queers in West Bay were. Madam Speaker, we knew who was lesbian, and we lived good with them. We gave them a ride. My parents would give them a ride, and when they got the car, they would give us schoolboys coming from school a ride. Everybody lived good. They had their jobs. Nobody ever troubled them. Because what goes on in those big countries where they discriminate and want to beat up people and do all kinds of stuff, that don't go on here in Cayman, ma'am. The only thing you can do, Cayman, if you do not touch the wrong person because you'll get licks. Simple, Madam Speaker. Keep it to yourself. Keep it behind closed doors. No one in this country is discriminating against anybody. Who's getting discriminated against, Madam Speaker, is Caymanians. And what I'm about to say, some people don't like to hear me say, especially if you have the wrong complexion. But that's the truth. That's the word on the street, and that's the word in the workplace, and too many Caymanians are saying so for it to be a coincidence. It's not happening in one place, it's happening in a lot of places. Where's our protection for our people, Madam Speaker? So in closing, like I said, I wouldn't be very long, because these gentlemen have covered it. They've covered almost everything. The Pandora's box that's called immigration. We made a mistake and came down here, and I would like to appreciate the lesson that I got this morning from a certain member across the floor there. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it was that person individual or not. On the mistake that we made when we came here and how we worded an immigration bill. And it's opened it up worse. And if you think the sham marriages that are up is bad now, you open this Pandora's box and you'll see the amount of sham marriages. Madam Speaker, this bill has to be taken to the public for consultation. It has to be vetted very carefully, and we can let everybody know it's coming. but we just have to do it the right way, not this rush business. Why they didn't rush that thing to keep us off the blacklist? Why was that rushed in here? Why don't they rush that commission to protect our Caymanians? And right now, we have a chance to reshape our country. COVID-19 is a curse, but in everything you try to find a silver lining. Let us shape our Caymanians into places now that it couldn't get in before. A lot of cheap labor is gone. There's still a lot here, but our Caymanians need jobs. Our Caymanians need a hand up. And what I've found out is a lot of them don't want handouts. Some of them, there's still a lot of pride here. Just give me a job, give me a chance, and respect me when I'm on the job. Talk to me right, and I'll talk back to you right. A young lady told me, first week on the job at a fast food place, the supervisor was rude to her, and she was rude back, and I said, you're wrong. You're just starting to work. She said, no, Mr. Burney, I'm sorry. Those days are done. You show me respect, I show you respect. And it's true. Madam Speaker, times have changed. The younger generation, due to technology, are not as dumb as we like to make them out to be, Madam Speaker. Growing up, we automatically showed respect to everybody who's older. With this generation now, you have to earn it. I'm sorry, that's the way it is. So, Madam Speaker, me, Bernie Bush from West Bay North, have 245 people. Of that 245, 230-something told me, do not support it. Every one of the churches that met with me said, do not support it. Madam Speaker, I cannot do it. I'm here to represent my people. Let the government go and try to rush through some of those, all those things that are outstanding, and especially that workplace discrimination is going on in this country. Let us try to protect our people and help our people and put some rights out there for Caymanians. And it's time for us to stop feeling guilty when somebody wants to say xenophobic. You're not xenophobic, you're just pro-Caymanian. You're not anti-anyone. Plain and simple. I'm not apologizing for defending my people. And I want to remind, there's a set of people out there that's confused. There's a set of people who have come from overseas, gotten their papers, and now voting and so forth. They're Caymanians too. So when we say Caymanians, we're talking about you. I didn't say paper Caymanian. I don't like that word. I don't say new Caymanians. I say Caymanians, and sometimes I will use the word indigenous. Because just like Australia and Canada and other places, and the United States, so the indigenous people, I think it's time for us to start to look at something for those indigenous Caymanians as well. If you say people try to make you feel guilty, you're not anti-anyone. You're just pro-Caymanian, plain and simple. So, Madam Speaker, I hope I have not offended anyone. It's not my intention. Madam Speaker, the country will know. I will be voting no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I've been here now next year, God's willing, some 24 and a half years. In fact, I'm told that I'm the longest serving woman ever in the history of the Cayman Islands. I've been through some very turbulent waters, some that we never thought that the good ship Cayman would come out, but it did. We've been through some very complex pieces of legislation that we never thought that we would have got passed because it was in the best interest of the country, but there was some division, but we did. I've been through times of sickness, surgeries, and you never thought you might have come out, but I did. I've been through a number of hurricanes, and I never thought that I would come out, but I did. What then was the common denominator? Just above your head, Madam Speaker. He have founded it upon the seas. And it's against that background that I stand and relate to the Apostle Paul when he said, and I say, I am not ashamed of the gospel of God, for it is the power of God unto salvation. That is not very popular today, Madam Speaker. It's not very easy today. And in my growing up days, as we Caymanians like to say, as we read in the New Testament, that blessed are those that are persecuted for his name's sake. I couldn't quite comprehend that. I couldn't quite wrap my mind around that. I couldn't quite get the extent of the cognizance required to fully understand what that meant. But today, I have. Madam Speaker, there is so many other things that I would rather be doing today than this. Whether it was in my ministry, and Cayman East, Cayman Islands generally, or at home, enjoying my new grandbaby, or celebrating with my buddy his birthday. But because when I answered the clarion call, it truly was for love of country. A love that condescends, no prejudice or boundaries. A love that comes on a level playing field. A love that has that almost very strange, innate capacity to agree to disagree and still be friends. A rare commodity these days. Madam Speaker, I thought that it would be prudent for me, as it was done in the Constitution that we now have before us there since 2009, that I too perhaps start off with a preamble. You know, the good book says that if you lack wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that if you asked, you would get it. So I'm going to follow his leading direction, because it has not to date led me astray. And I want, just in passing, I won't put a lot of weight on it, but I want, Madam Speaker, to just cause our minds to be exercised by the standing orders, and just ask ourselves, why? And I stand to be persuaded this position was not taken as it relates to this bill. And I kindly refer your good self, Madam Speaker, to Standing Order 35, and I'll just read it and leave it there. It says, reference shall not be made to any matter on which judicial decision is pending in such a way as might, in the opinion of the chair, prejudice the interests of the parties thereto. As I understand it, there are still outstanding matters before the Privy Council. But because this bill was such an important debate for this country to hear, for history to record, where every man and every woman, duly elected, constitutionally appointed in this honorable chamber, stands on this most important issue. I didn't raise at the beginning on a procedural matter because I was not desirous to get a ruling, neither am I now. I just wanted to put it in the record so that we can, in the weighing of the balance, see what precedents we set. Madam Speaker, then, I thought that I ought to, in doing my presentation, move on to another point that may or may not, at the end of these August discussions, prove to be of paramount consideration, and speak to some procedure. And before anybody jumps up and talks about a relevant thing, I would ask them to permit me with their kind indulgence and hear it out. That is the cast and vote of the Speaker. Madam Speaker, Section 75 of our Constitution. And I have lots of papers, so I beg your kind indulgence, Madam Speaker. Section 75 of our Constitution, Madam Speaker. And I read with your kind permission. I don't have to lay it because everybody should have access to it. Voting. Section 75(1). Save as otherwise provided in this Constitution, all questions proposed for decision in the Legislative Assembly shall be determined by a majority of votes of the members present and voting. Relevance. This bill before us today can only pass by us voting yes. 9 votes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If 9 people vote in the affirmative, aye or yes, this bill will pass. If 9 of us vote no, the bill cannot and it will not pass. We have a choice. We talk about alternative lifestyle. Well, as parliamentarians, we don't have that privilege, Madam Speaker. Our choice was to represent the people. Many of us told them when we were campaigning, Madam Speaker, that we would be their voice. I, for one, when I commenced my first campaign in 1991, I still have my T-shirt in my closet that says, "A legal voice for the people." And I contemplated, Madam Speaker, just voting no and not debating. Because as one looked at my history in this Parliament, I don't get up for the sake of speaking, but those who know me know that I don't sit down because I can't speak. And as I got the representations from every single district in the Cayman Islands, including Little Cayman, I have no choice but to carry out my promise to the people of these islands that I love, and I'm sure every single honorable member here love, and to do what they've asked, what is stated in the preamble of the Constitution, and not support this bill. I never got, Madam Speaker, one single solitary person trying to convince me, cajole me, and I could use some other adjectives, not to support this bill. Why? Because they know who I am. When I ran in 1992, Madam Speaker, I ran as a Christian. They elected me as a Christian. When I choose not to run again, or the people choose not to re-elect me again, I will do so as a Christian. And I make no apologies for that, Madam Speaker. The people have their all-powerful vote in a few months' time. And if for some reason I misread, which I highly doubt, I did fairly well at English when I went to all levels of school, then they would vote me out. If they felt that I carried out their wishes, then they will do what they've done for the last 24 and a half years. But even beyond that, I want to go on record to thank the Honorable Premier when I requested in Cabinet to exercise a conscience vote. And not only did he allow me to do it, but in fact, in his graciousness, he extended that to every single member of our caucus and Cabinet. Why is that important, Madam Speaker? Because at the conclusion of this debate, not one single member in my caucus and in my government can blame the Premier for the way they voted, because he has released us from collective responsibility, from party responsibility, and he could no better do knowing that he was the main architect of the Constitution and believes and served many years and passionately still is working to get more amendments. And Madam Speaker, I try not to say things unless I can back it up. If I refer to the Constitution, again, Madam Speaker, with your kind permission, we would see that under the Bill of Rights, that there is indeed a freedom of conscience, Section 10, one for your ease of reference. No person shall, that's mandatory, there's no inherent discretion. No person shall be hindered by the government in the enjoyment of his or her freedom of conscience. And I'm so glad for subsection 2, 10.2. Freedom of conscience includes freedom of thought and of religion or religious denominations. I thank God for that freedom today. And it's in the exercise of that freedom I stand and debate here too. And in fact, Madam Speaker, although that is sufficient, the Constitution gave me an added protection. Section 11 of the Constitution duly reads, with your kind permission, 11.1, no person shall be hindered by government in the enjoyment of his or her freedom of expression, which includes freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart ideas, called debate, and information without interference, and freedom from interference with his or her correspondence or other means of communications. So my phone should not be bugged. Madam Speaker, the Constitution in Section 75, again, if I may kindly refer your attention, also speaks, well, let me do 74 first, quorum, because that might become an issue as well. I've been here many times where seats are vacated. This is one bill, no seat, absolutely no seat on the government side or the backbench side should be vacated. We cannot be fish or fowl. Let every man's yes be yes, and woman and no be no. But just in the event, quorum 74.2 says, for the purpose of this section, a quorum shall consist of a majority of the elected members of the Legislative Assembly, in addition to your good self, Madam Speaker, being the person presiding. Break it down. I'm not like my good friend, the Honourable Minister of Finance, who has a CPA, and perhaps my friend across the way. But I did go to school to do more than eat lunch. So, Madam Speaker, that translates as follows. We have 19 members based on our Constitution. The substantive Speaker is an abstention, and we have an acting Speaker in your good self. That leaves 17 of us honourable members in this House. Hence the reason why we need 9 to pass the bill or 9 to stop the bill. Madam Speaker, voting 75.1 says, as otherwise provided in the Constitution, all questions proposed for decision, and at the end of this second reading, your good self will propose a question. How will that be determined? The Constitution tells us. And I'm reading this for the benefit, not of members, because members, I would well imagine, is familiar with the procedure, but for the public that put us here. The question will be put for decision by us, the Legislative Assembly, and it shall be determined by how much votes? A majority of votes of the members present. That's why we need to be in here and voting. The Speaker or other member presiding shall not vote. There's a proviso. Unless on any question the votes are equally divided, otherwise known as a tie vote, in which case he or she shall have and exercise a casting vote. And for completeness sake, 75.3 says that the Deputy Governor and Attorney General shall not be entitled to vote. So I'm not forgetting them, I'm just reading what the Constitution said. So then, Madam Speaker, if we then look at what our standing orders say. Standing Order 13.1 deals with a quorum. It says a quorum of the House shall consist of a majority of the elected members in addition to the person presiding. The quorum, and that's a committee, we don't need that. But then, Madam Speaker, the other relevant question is that some may say, well, the standing orders is silent on what the presiding officer shall do. I heard that floating around. Well, the framers of our standing orders, though they're named in need of modernization, contemplated such situations. And in fact, we see, Madam Speaker, that in Standing Order 88, it says, matters not provided for by standing orders. 88.1, and any matter not herein provided for, resort shall be had to the usage and the practice of the House of Commons and the Parliament of the Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which shall be followed as far as the same as may be applicable to the House, and not inconsistent with these standing orders, nor with the practice of the House. In cases of doubt, the standing orders of this House shall be interpreted in light of the relevant usage and practice of the House of Commons, but no restriction in the House of Commons has introduced by standing order after making of those standing orders shall be deemed to extend to the House or its members until the House has, by standing order, provided for such restriction. Why is that important, Madam Speaker? Because I'm happy to have in my possession the 25th edition of Erskine Mere Parliamentary Practice, page 470, and perhaps a little bit on 471. Members are taking some time to look at, Madam Speaker, so I beg your indulgence. I don't want people to think that I'm just making this up. It says 820, 89, page 470. And I quote with your kind permission, Madam Speaker. If the numbers in a division, which members have the right to do after the question is put, are equal, the Speaker must give a casting vote. Listen carefully. In the performance of this duty to give a casting vote, the Speaker is at liberty to vote like any other member according to the conscience without giving a reason. But, and those of us who studied English, but is a conjunction. It means you look and see what comes after the but. But in order to avoid imputation upon the Speaker's impartiality, it is usual, when practical, and those are conditions precedent, and I know that there's a possibility of some coming behind to deal with it, and we'll deal with procedural matters at that time. I won't take any more of my time to deal with that now. But to say to vote in such manner as to make the decision of the House final, and to give reasons which are entered into the journal. Page 2090, page 47. There were three main principles that emanated from this same parliamentary Bible as it was. Number one, the Speaker should always vote for further discussion where this is possible. That's not applicable in this case. Number two, where no further discussion is possible, decisions should not be taken except by a majority. A casting vote, number three, on an amendment to a bill should leave the bill in its existing form. Madam Speaker, I wanted and I felt obliged that I needed to share that so that there wouldn't be a confusion in the, and this is a leap of faith, unlikely event that there is a tie vote. I didn't want people to be scrambling as to what the procedure was, or the public not understanding what was happening and putting you under undue pressure as why you went this way or why you went the other way. They would know absolutely clear what your role and functionality is, and I believe we have a duty to explain it to them. Madam Speaker, I want now, with your permission, to look at this proposition that the UK will do this or the UK will do that. Based on what I was able to find within a short space of time, I am convinced, unless otherwise shown in writing by the appropriate authorities, that the UK will not force civil unions on us. In fact, as far back as 2003, I think that's the date, Madam Speaker, it's quite small, so I stand to be corrected, but it was on April 2nd. Maybe it was 2008, whatever the date was. The Net News had a picture on the front page, and if you wasn't quite sure, you would think that that was what the headline was about, but you have to go to the far right side, and it's entitled, UK will not force civil unions, comma, 2008. I thank you, Leader of Opposition. Madam Speaker, with your permission, I'd like to lay this on the table and ask for the relevant copies to be circulated in due course.
So allowed.
Thank you, ma'am.
Honourable Minister of Education.
And then some may be tempted to say, well, that was 2008. Well, let's fast forward to 2019. The Foreign Affairs Committee, Madam Speaker, with your kind permission, I'd like to refer to the Global House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee, Global Britain and British Overseas Territories Resetting the Relationship. Government responds to the committee's 15th report. And Madam Speaker, this was the 20th special report session of 2017-19. It was ordered by the House of Commons and printed on the 70th of May 2019. And with your permission, I'd like to refer to it and then lay it so that the copies could be made. It was referred to earlier in other persons' debate. Madam Speaker, I won't go through all of it, but in particular, I will kindly ask for your attention to be drawn to paragraph 8 on page 4. The committee recommended that the government should set a date by which it expects all overseas territories to have legalized same-sex marriage. If that date is not met, the government should intervene through legislation or an order in council. And if persons just stop there, they would concur with what is being proposed in some quarters today. But Madam Speaker, we have to read on and go to page 5, where it says, and this is the UK government's response to that report. The UK government, Madam Speaker, is committed to equal rights, they don't hide it, including the LGBT rights. We believe the strongest, safest, and most prosperous societies are those in which all citizens can live freely without fear of discrimination, and where all citizens, including LGBT people, can play a full and active part in the society. We would call that the introduction. They then go on to do a statement of fact where they say 9 overseas territories have legal recognition and protection for same-sex relationships. At the time of writing, a 10th territory, if you think that Cayman is just hiding away now, the Cayman Islands was granted a stay by the Chief Justice ruling in favor of the same-sex marriage until August 2019, when the government's appeal will be heard. And thank God the government did appeal. We were heard and we won that appeal. The British Overseas Territories, and this is what is important in the next section, the British Overseas Territories, Madam Speaker, are separate, largely self-governing jurisdictions with their own democratically elected representatives. That's the 17 of us in here today, Madam Speaker. Our relationship with the overseas territories is based on a partnership, not a unilateral ship, not a leadership, but a partnership. And therefore, as policy on marriage law is an area of devolved responsibility, that means they have given us something. It should be for the territories, it should be for the Cayman Islands to decide and legislate on. That's what we're doing here today, Madam Speaker. As has been demonstrated by recent LGBT cases, the territories' justice mechanisms and processes should be allowed the space to address these matters. Well, I would like to add in, because of separation of powers, law, the administration of law took many years ago. Yes, there's a rule of law, but there's a principle called the separation of powers. In the executive, what we call go-up building, We have our own functionality, role clarity. In this honorable parliament, even though we seem to get the least weight and attention and respect nowadays, we have a job to do as well. That job is before each one of us today. Do it well. Do the judiciary across the street, they have a job to do. And we respect them. When they overreach, we appeal them, and we hope to win, Madam Speaker. But it cannot be a one-sided thing where we come up here in Parliament and are expected to have a conch shell mentality. And for those of us who haven't taken the time to familiarize ourselves with the Cayman culture, the conch is one of our edible things. In fact, my good friend, the Minister of Health, Mother prepared him a most sumptuous conch dinner today. But when you go diving, as I've done many times, to Bracken, Little Cayman, and a conch see you approaching, they draw up into their shell and try to find some grass to go under, or some camouflage through the rustling of the mud. Our people, Madam Speaker, did not put us here for conch shell mentality. Madam Speaker, I have too much German blood in me for that. And then, Madam Speaker, I trust I've put that to rest. But in case that has not been put to rest, the UK have hundreds of years of perfecting diplomacy. They're some of the best in the world, and I commend them for that. The UK, having just recently, under much turmoil, exited Brexit, they have to answer to the United Nations. They are not alone themselves. In fact, they are embarking on global Britain. Do you think that they want to start that journey by doing an order in council on the Cayman Islands against the will of the majority of the people in the Cayman Islands? And why do I say that, Madam Speaker? Because there have been no scientific method to show that it's not the will of the Cayman Island people, nor is the will. So we have to go by what we know, by going to house, by social media, by people coming up in church, by people coming in supermarket. And in fact, to be in Parliament for one term, much less 24, 28, current speaker 30-something, you don't get there because you go in and mean and mine and more. You get there by knowing your people and your people knowing you. So if at this stage we can truly stand in this honorable Parliament and say that the majority of the people of the Cayman Islands support this bill, then I would sit down and ask you to rise to prove it to me. Is that simple, Madam Speaker? And Madam Speaker, the same good book that we use to say that we pray, we do this and we do that, has so many gems that can lead us and guide us. It says if we lack wisdom and knowledge, he would give it to us. But it also says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto the Most High God what is God. In fact, just this past Sunday, I had the privilege of preaching from Psalms 99. I won't do that here today, but I will, with your kind permission, to refer to the title, Our God Reigns, He's Faithful. Are you? And it went on to say how God, in the New Testament, calls Moses and Samuel's name, not because that was the only name or those were the only names that he could remember, but because it said they had obeyed him and he answered their prayers. I want to go on record today, Madam Speaker, to thank the thousands of people in these beautiful Cayman Islands for having prayed, who is praying even as we're here in Parliament, and who will continue to pray, because the effectual, fervent prayer availeth much. Yes, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, just to say we have now reached the hour of 4:30 p.m. May I have a motion for the suspension of standing orders?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move the suspension of Standing Order 10-2 in order for the House to work past the hour of interruption.
The question is that Standing Order 10-2 be suspended to enable the business of the House to continue beyond the hour of 4:30 p.m. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The House will continue beyond the hour of 4:30 p.m. Please continue, Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you most kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill is like a pebble. Those of us before the advent of technology used a number of things to entertain us, including taking a pebble and skipping it on the beach and see the ripple effect. That's what this bill is going to do, Madam Speaker. How do I know? I had the opportunity to visit the United Kingdom last year a couple of times, and on one of those occasions, Madam Speaker, His Excellency the Governor kindly provided an opportunity for me and my team to meet with the Minister of Education, the then Minister of Education, who met with me in the House of Parliament, one of their committee rooms, brought along his educational technical team. Muslim gentleman, very nice guy, very diplomatic and cordial. But once he finished with his exchanges and I with mine, I guess I realized what the main idea, but the main message that was trying to be conveyed, that they had the British curriculum, and in fact, they were moving in September to what they termed as the special relationships introduction of the curriculum, and wanted to feel me out and almost direct that in the curriculum that we're trying to do in Cayman, that was going to come in. I said, then, Madam Speaker, and in case it wasn't recorded, permit me please to say it now. While I have the confidence of the Honourable Premier and my colleagues to remain as Minister of Education, it will not happen in my shift. If the majority wants it to happen, then another Minister of Education will have to be found. Because, Madam Speaker, we don't have a mandate for it. And I cannot, in my good conscience, change that curriculum for third graders. We have children, we have grandchildren, third graders to be taught about special relationships. Those of you that know me know I like to ask questions, and normally I have the answer, if at all possible, before I ask the question. And I was told that it means teaching them about alternative lifestyles, because those children in my primary school, your children and your grandchildren and your relatives' children, need, for some unknown reason, to know how to be a homosexual and how to function and how to do this. Really? When I have children graduating that can't do math and English in some of the grades, Madam Speaker? I don't think so. I don't think so, Madam Speaker. So let it be known far and near and across the way for all of those who I'm sure are tied to the television watching to see the outcome of what Cayman will do, because we have gained that reputation of being front runners, of leaders, and if that was not proven, our Honourable Premier proved that with his team during COVID-19. It was uncharted waters, just as we are in today. And we were able to make decisions and acquire items that saved our people and our country. And today, we come with the funeral bells ringing and the bouquet ready to be put on. You see, this is but the beginning, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, if this was not so serious, like I mentioned to you earlier, I would have just voted, because I've talked about this. People know my position. But Madam Speaker, let's look and see the deceptiveness of what we're dealing with today. This is printed, and I'll lay a copy, Madam Speaker, by the government, that's the UK government, Equalities Office. And they proudly proclaim and set out in writing our journey towards LGBT equality. A journey isn't done like Burger King. It's over a period of time. Remember 1999? Well, some of you weren't here, but 1999 white paper called the Partnerships. It was merely mentioned, and in fact, there was a picture in there. Remember what we learned in primary school? A picture's worth 1,000 words? Then we went to the other white paper. And then 1553, the Buggery Act. They set out, they say, same-sex activity is sinful. Even them knew what sin was then. It wasn't sugar-coated as we do today and call it all sorts of pretty adjectives. And they say it was outlawed and punishable by death. They waited hundreds of years to 1861, Madam Speaker, and then the Offences Against the Person Act came into being. That was a death penalty. It was removed, but male same-sex acts remained illegal and punishable by imprisonment. And then in 1957, the Wolfenden Report concluded that homosexuality should not be a criminal offense, nor considered as a disease. 1967, Sexual Offences Act. This limited the decriminalization of homosexual acts in England and Wales. Then in 1981, we had Dungeon and the United Kingdom case, the criminalization of private same-sex acts in breach of Article 8 of the ECHR. Sounds familiar? Yeah. 1981, Madam Speaker, we had the Sexual Offences Act, which was extended to Scotland. 1982, the same act extended to Northern Ireland. 1988, Section 28, Madam Speaker, the Local Government Act amended prohibiting international promotion of homosexuality. And then in 1997, quickly, Madam Speaker, we had Sutherland versus the United Kingdom. The difference in ages of consent, they said, violated Article 8 and Article 14 of the ECHR. So then in 1999, they reformed the law on rape and other sexual offenses and attempts to legislate to equalize the age of consent to 16. The same thing that some of my colleagues on this side and colleagues on that side is grappling with today with this age of consent of 16. And in 1999, they had the case of Smith and Grady versus United Kingdom, which the investigation into and discharge of a Royal Navy personnel who they said was in breach of Article 8 and Article 13. 2000 had the Sexual Offences Amendment Act. They did it gradually, Madam Speaker, where they did equalization of the age of consent to 16. And then they did new general codes of sexual conduct. Sexual orientation is not to be barred to service in the armed forces. 2002, you heard about some of these consequential pieces of legislation that if this passed today will have to be amended. One of them will be the Adoption and the Children's Act. 2002, UK did it. Single persons or couple can adopt a child. Notice the language. You could have said sexual orientation, same-sex. Single person or couple can adopt a child, just like our immigration law went from husband and wife, that it should have been to spouse and open the door for that. 2002, Christine Goodwin against the United Kingdom. ECTHR was in favor of post-operative transgender rights. Well, you may say, well, Mr. Juliana, that's 2002. That was the UK. Check what happened in Cayman. Check and see how a transgender who was born one sex did the surgery, Madam Speaker, went and applied for a passport, Madam Speaker, and the passport now reflects the change of sex in Cayman. The ripple effect. 2003, Sexual Offense Act came and swept away the sex-specific legislation. 2003, we had an employment equality, which was based on sexual orientation regulations. Discrimination protects on sexual orientation in employment. Then 2004, they went to the Civil Partnership Act, just where we are today. Separate unions, which give most of the rights and responsibilities to civil marriages. They weren't satisfied with that, so in 2004, Madam Speaker, they did the Gender Recognition Act. A duck by any name is still a duck. Transgender persons can change their legal gender in the UK. 2007, they went back to the Sexual Orientations Regulation, which prohibit and the discrimination of the grounds of sexual orientation in the provision of goods and services. They're not missing out anything, Madam Speaker. 2010, they went back for the Equality Act, which dealt with sexual orientation and gender reassignment are protected characteristics. 2013, where we will be in Roughton if we're not careful here today, the Marriage and the Same-Sex Couples Act, same-sex marriage in England and Wales. 2014, Marriage and Civil Partnership Scotland Act, same-sex marriage in Scotland. And then, after they bragged about their incremental journey to this great thing called sexual orientation and rights, the very last page, Madam Speaker, says, what have we learned? And they say, I guess this was before COVID-19, a white and a black hand held together, saying, know your allies and align your support if you think they're not organized. Then they say, frame the debate. Then they say, invest in changing social attitudes, small screen, big stream, and impact. Then they said they had to raise awareness. Listen to this one, Madam Speaker. Know your opponents and prepare your response. And finally, share good information and good practice. Madam Speaker, I too would like to ask, and I thank you for your indulgence to listen for that repetition, but I felt it was necessary, Madam Speaker, to share with members that this isn't a one-time thing. This isn't that we pass this today and that's it, they're not going to trouble us again. Because there's a section in the Constitution, I believe it's Section 5, that talks about the court, how they can look and they can read things into being, and the court can, well, the court these days seems to be making law, and we have to be appealing it, but it's a costly exercise. So we have no guarantee. Let them be a man or a woman to their word and provide to our Honourable Premier that if we do not pass this today, that they're not going to give us the constitutional changes that they know we need, and the Premier and others have worked so hard for us to get. Let them put it in writing. The debate isn't finished yet. We can do it just like that, and you can get it sent down to our good Deputy Governor, who is the representative of the Governor's Office and Her Majesty here. And I'm sure he would not be reluctant, because he never has incarnated his duties, to lay it here so that every member can see it and the public can read it, and they won't be a guessing game, Madam Speaker. This is not hide and seek. This is about the future of our beloved Cayman Islands and the future of our children. They should, if in a partnership, let's take a husband and wife, because that will soon become in archives or the museum. That's a partnership, Madam Speaker. Do we believe that that partnership is going to have a longevity element if there are secrets in it? Or if the man has all the say or the woman has all the say? If it's a partnership, we must be equals before the table. And I've seen our Honourable Premier perform on TV, in the room and out of the room. I've known him practically all of my life, at least early teenage, because Deb and I have been good friends for a long time, and Judy and Evelyn, Audrey and the rest of them. He is as capable, if not more, than any of them there. And let me say that again. He is as capable, if not more, than any of them there. Otherwise, he would not have been Premier for 2 years, and for 2 terms. And if I had my way, that would be an amendment, Madam Speaker, that we put inside this Constitution, that there was no term limits. Because with a small amount of Caymanians, and I'm grateful to my honourable ministerial friend who reminded us, and I'm sure the statistician across the street, across the hall, will remind us that Caymanians are quickly getting in the minority. And Madam Speaker, the more things that come that we allow to divide ourselves is the more opportunity that we are creating for those who are in the minority that are getting statutory majority graduation. Let me say that again. The more that we allow things to divide us is the more that we are giving opportunity to those who are now in the minority to get statutory protection to become the majority. Some may say, well, you're old-fashioned. Well, I'd rather be old-fashioned and standing for the Lord Jesus Christ than to be standing for nothing and falling for everything, Madam Speaker. In a day, in a night, in a month. Madam Speaker, one may say, well, why all the hype? Because of the lack of transparency. Madam Speaker, what do I mean by that? Madam Speaker, all members should remember, if not, permit me to remind them. Remember, so many members got so excited about a piece of legislation that came here before this Honourable House entitled the Criminal Records, Spent Convictions, Application for Expungement Law. We all were happy that some of our people would be given second chances, that they would not go into Northwood Prison and the door would become a revolving door. We were happy that our Caymanians that were put there for maybe smoking a spliff or whatever would have opportunities if they proved themselves under this. In fact, this happiness was enshrined in our legislation by virtue, Madam Speaker, of Section 16 of the said Criminal Records Spent Conviction Law 2018 revision. And I read as follows with your kind permission. On receipt of an application for an expungement of a criminal record, the board, and I'll skip down to subsection C, may, in the case of an offense referred to in Schedule 3, Item 2, cause inquiries of an offense referred to in Schedule 3, Item 2, sorry, let me read this again. May, in the case of an offense, Madam Speaker, referred to in Schedule 3, Item 2, cause inquiries to be made with respect to factors which are relevant to determining whether the approving an expungement or a criminal record would bring the administration of justice into disrepute. To be able to understand that, we didn't need to go to the Schedule 3, 2, which says that a sentence exceeding 5 years, crime-free period, 15 years, but subject to the approval of the board in accordance with the criteria prescribed in and under Section 16(1). So in other words, you make an application, if you fall within the criteria, to be expunged. Why is that relevant? Why is that important? Give me time, Madam Speaker, and I'll tell you, ma'am. The regulations, which we know are made in Cabinet, they're not in the affirmative, so they don't come here. In 2018, Regulation 3, for the purposes of 16(1)(c), which I just read, in determining whether the expunging of an applicant's record would bring the administration of justice into disrepute, the board may consider, among other things, and there's a number, but I'll go to C. Listen carefully. The commission of the offense was motivated by bias, prejudice, or hate based on race, national or ethnic origin, language, color, religion, gender, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, or any other similar act. If we think that that rock that we're about to finish throwing into the 7 Mile Beach Caribbean Sea hasn't already begun its ripple effect, we go and check some of our regulations. In other words, if you're found guilty of hate speech, which for all I know could be me on a Sunday morning preaching from Romans 1, verses 22, 23, thereabout, will this be considered hate speech? I'd like to know for those who can assist me with this. Well, first, Madam Speaker, let me go. I think it's Leviticus 18, verses 22. Thou shalt not lie with mankind, as with womankind. It is an abomination. That's the word of God. Romans 1, verses, a number of verses, but I'll read. Wherefore God also, starting with verse 24, God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worship and serve the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause, God gave them up to vile affections, for even their women did change their natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lusts, one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense for the error which met. And even as they did not like, this is where we are today, Madam Speaker, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient. And it goes on. You can read it. People can read it at their own leisure, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, turning now to the bill at hand, the Domestic Partnership Bill. Madam Speaker, I will not take the time of this Honourable House to go through the bill, but I've read the bill. I have read the bill, Madam Speaker. And I dare say I have understood the bill, Madam Speaker. What I wasn't clear about, I asked, and I'm convinced that I got the gist of the bill, Madam Speaker. I will not take time to go through the provisions of it, because I'm voting no against it, and I will not waste the time of the House. If matters come up in committee stage that I need to speak to, I can use it during that time, Madam Speaker. But I want to say also that not only did the Honourable Premier free us so that we could have a conscience vote, but also by so doing released us from collective responsibility. So it's with a heavy heart that you have to sit here, then stand here and speak against a government bill. But permission was granted, and to do any less would be totally out of character and expectation by those who know me. Madam Speaker, we will see as we look at this bill. Before doing it, let me just say one more thing. I also heard whispering in some corners that, you know, people are born that way and la, la, la. I'm not a scientist, but I want to say I did a little bit of research, and I did find under the human person, sexuality and family, politics and law, education and culture, business and economics section, a recent report, if you can permission, and I'll lay it in due course. It's entitled Born That Way No More, The New Science of Sexual Orientation. It's in September 30th, 2019, by Mr. Paul Sullins. And I read, Madam Speaker, a new study adds to a growing body of evidence demonstrating that the dominant narrative about sexual orientation, that it is genetically determined, simply cannot be true. Instead, the science shows, not Juliana, not even the Bible, if you don't want to believe that, but the science shows that a person's sexual orientation and choice of partners depends heavily on the development and expression of personal autonomy regarding one's own sexual possibilities. Late last month, a team from MIT and Harvard, was no Yaya Finke University, but Harvard scientists, published a landmark study of the genetic basis for sexual orientation in its journal. The study was based on an examination on the genetic material on almost 500,000 persons, Madam Speaker, definitively refuting the idea that being gay is an innate condition that is controlled or legally compelled by one's genetic makeup. The study, Madam Speaker, contained 2 findings, and that's all I'll deal with this. Firstly, Madam Speaker, it found that the effect of the genes we inherit from our parents, known as heritability, on same-sex orientation was very weak, at only 0.32 on a scale from a 0, none, to 1 total heritability. This means, Madam Speaker, that a person's developmental environment, which includes diet, family, friends, neighborhood, religion, and a host of other conditions, is twice as influential on the probability of developing same-sex behavior or orientation of a person's genes. And secondly and lastly, rebutting decades of widespread belief. The study established that there is certainly no single genetic determinant, sometimes referred to as the gay gene in the media, that causes the same-sex behavior. Madam Speaker, I am told in the same Bible to love everyone, and I try my endeavor best to do that. The same Bible tells us to love our very enemies. That is much more difficult to do, but the Bible also tells me that with God, all things are possible. And where 1 can tread 1,000, 2 can tread 10,000 angels. In fact, Madam Speaker, we as Christians try our best not to bully anyone. We live in a democratic society, and if they want to engage in that type of activity, that's between them and God. Most of us, Madam Speaker, if not all of us, have friends, have family members who have chosen this lifestyle, and we love them. Some cases we provide for them, but I still have a responsibility to speak the truth, because the same Bible says this truth shall set us free. I am grateful, extremely grateful to our forefathers and mothers who have paved the path and told us right from wrong. It's such an easy temptation, and it is said in so many corners these days that legislators have no business with morality. That's like saying that street lights have no business on our streets. You know the case that is resultant therefrom, Madam Speaker? Our God is a God of order. His reasons are not tautological. They are sound, and they've proven and have been tested over the decades of time. But Madam Speaker, I have to confess today that for the first time in my 59 years, I have felt that it's almost criminal to be a Christian. I have felt, and nobody can tell me what I have felt. It's subjective, because I have felt it, that if you stand whether in this honorable chamber, whether you stand in a caucus, in a government, in a church, even, because we know our Caymanian churches have their politics in it. Shouldn't be, but it's there. That if you dare to be a Daniel, if you dare to be an Esther, where you say, if I perish, but I will stand upon the word of God, that you are labeled a fundamental, fanatical person. That's why we call Christians, because we are to be Christ-like. We are to love, and we do love. But love has no part in its connotation or definition for compromise. Once we allow compromise to come in, truth is adulterated, and it loses its purity, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like, however, before I take my chair and wait to vote, refer to section 47 and section 48 of this draft bill. Section 47 reads as follows, Madam Speaker, under the caption, Clarification of the Law of Marriages. Unless a marriage falls within Section 48, a marriage is void unless the parties are respectively male and female. Now, Madam Speaker, if that had said, and this is only after if the bill was passed after the second reading and if we were in committee stage that we were discussing, that's why I have not filed an amendment, Madam Speaker. If it had said that a marriage is void unless the parties are respectively male and female, then there wouldn't be much argument. But those words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, unless a marriage falls within Section 48. So in other words, it's saying that a marriage is void unless the parties are respective male and female. But because they have this condition precedent, it means that there is a minimum of an instance that it would not be void if it is not between a man and a woman. And if that's not correct, I stand to be corrected, and I'm open to persuasion. But let us look at Section 48, saving for certain same-sex marriages. In my day, when I was growing up, I was poor like most people, so you were taught to save. But one, Madam Speaker, can only save that which one has. That's a little bit philosophical, so let me repeat it for emphasis. One can only save what one has. So, for example, Madam Speaker, if I have this bottle of water, I can save it because I have it. If I don't have the bottle of water, I have nothing to save. Where is that going? Let me tell you, Madam Speaker and honorable colleagues, how can you save same-sex marriages if we're saying that we don't recognize them here and they're not registrable here? Whose marriage are we trying to save from the same sex? Every one of us up in here, it's been between a man and a woman. I don't see one single one, not even in the gallery, who has been married legally to this date and recognized in the Cayman Islands as a marriage. That is why so much care has been taken with the nomenclature of this bill. And I commend the drafters. It's an excellent job. But remember the turtle and the rabbit? It's not what happens at the beginning of the race, Madam Speaker. Often is what you find at the end of the race. Likewise, it says in the good book, to him that endureth to the end, the same shall be saved. So I would be most grateful, most appreciative, if somebody could convince and explain to me why is it necessary in a bill that we've gone to such a length to persuade, dissuade in some instances, that, oh, this is a first step, we have to do it, we have to adhere to the rule of law, all those good arguments that were put forward. But yet we're going to end it off by saying we're going to save same-sex marriage? Really, Madam Speaker? How can we vote for this here today and go home and face our constituents and said, I didn't know what I was doing? I didn't understand it? Well, by God, if it's that case, then abstain. But because, Madam Speaker, the votes are so close on this most critical place, not only, Madam Speaker, can we not afford as representatives to be absent from our seats when that question is put, but no one in here should abstain on a bill like this. Let me tell you why. Because I, like many, have been doing the calculations. And it isn't past 17. I can count to that. Probably backwards if I wanted to. We've got to the point where we need 9 to stop this bill or to pass this bill. The choice is up to us. Nobody else out there, not even the people who sponsored us, not our spouses, not our children, not our wives, it's the people who put us here. We come here as trustees, Madam Speaker, and the people trust us to do what is right. Not what UK wants us to do, not what the governor wants us to do, not even what the Queen wants us to do. We have an allegiance. We have a responsibility. Had it not been for that vote, none of us would be representatives. Right. And I didn't see any of us going around, and if you did, I can sit down, you stand up. I'm happy to. Where when any of us went around and campaigned, we told them, you vote for me on election day, and after that, you don't need to come to me, and I don't need to come to you because I'll make up my mind for you. Really, Madam Speaker? Amen. I don't, in my 24 years, I've never heard such ludicrous, and that is what we are purporting to do here today. Yes, we had social media. Yes, it's been talked about. Yes, people, I admire the honourable member from Northside who went and had a meeting. It's not his responsibility if the whole of Northside did not come up. His responsibility was to get there. Some of us did it through social media. Some of us did it through house to house or going around. He chose the traditional method. And Madam Speaker, when we come here, we must ask two questions. Will the majority of the people in my constituency agree with my vote today? But more importantly, who is it more important for me to answer to? The judges, governor, even premier colleagues, opposition, or the Most High King? Amen. When that day comes, and it is coming. Amen. You don't believe it? Read Matthew 24 for homework when you go home tonight. And you'll see that the signs of time are everywhere. And he said, when you see these things, look up, because our redemption draweth nigh. When we stand on that great day, can we say that we did all that we could have, should have, would have on this great day? We've read about many historical landmark things that happen in this country. Some members in Parliament know that did things. Minister from Northside in health, social services, Attorney General, civil service, world-class civil service. All of these members here have made their mark. What will our legacy be, Madam Speaker, if we support this bill, knowing that there is a rule of law, man-made law and God's law? The choice is yours. And even if you vote, because you promised that you're going to vote a certain way, before a division is called, our standing order makes provision for that, that if you feel that it was a fraudulent slip or you voted in mistake, before it's announced, you can change your vote. So our forefathers were so smart, they gave us a second chance. So none of us, absolutely none of us here today, can leave these honorable chambers and say, I didn't know what I was doing. I was forced to do what I was doing. I had to toe the party line. I'm afraid of the UK. What good mother ought we be afraid of? Madam Speaker, I thank you for your patience and your indulgence. I do so knowing that there may be consequences, but as I said before, in every generation, God raises up a Daniel, a Moses, a Esther. And as she said, when she said, I must see the king, if I perish, I perish. I say that without fear of contradiction. If I perish, I perish. Because we have an infinite, eternal hope that this world is not our home. We're just a passing through. And it's said, as is often said at many funerals, it's not your date of birth, it's not even your death date that counts. It's that dash that's in between. This is a moment in time. This is a moment to make a mark of that dash that will be our legacy. I trust we mark it well. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the member for Boddentown West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. According to Pastor Ralph Sockman, the test of courage comes when we are in the minority, and the test of tolerance comes when we are in the majority. Madam Speaker, I understand that the governor is under the impression that I would support this bill because of my support of the Black Lives Matter campaign. It is clear that people who are not black can never understand the challenges that come with being black. Just yesterday, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Commerce and the member for Georgetown North, and also the member for Prospect this morning, noted their contributions about the reference that at one time in our history that slavery was acceptable. The Premier also said yesterday, Madam Speaker, off mic, that he would remind me of the conversation I had with him on this issue. Well, Madam Speaker, you don't need to remind me, as I have a simple rule. I don't say anything in private that I can't say in public. Madam Speaker, I know that you and other members in this House get the weekly messages that I send out on WhatsApp, that I also post to Facebook for the world to see. So I was never one to shy away from sharing my inner thoughts. I'm just going to ask you to indulge a little bit because I'm really under the weather, but that's why I couldn't make it in this morning, but I was not going to miss today. So I can tell you by the grace of God, I am here today to deliver this speech. You see, Madam Speaker, one of the advantages of going to an all-boys school in Kingston is that you learn to be tough, or people take your lunch money. As you can see from my size, I have not missed much lunch. From an early age, Madam Speaker, I say what I want to say, and it didn't bother me who liked it or not. I was a big boy, and I was happy to settle it another way if needs be. Madam Speaker, most people have no idea how my wife Shauna transformed me into the person you see today. Between her efforts and coming from a house with a praying mother, you get to see a different person, a calmer person, a gentler person, and not the confrontational terror that I was as a teenager. The public would have heard me say many times on the radio that I don't have to do anything in life except stay fat, black, and die. So, Madam Speaker, I was never one at a loss for words or afraid to say what was on my mind. Excuse me. Political correctness was never me, and quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why I was elected. The people are tired of political correctness. With that said, Madam Speaker, let's start with the governor, who believes that I would support this bill because of my support of Black Lives Matter. Last month, on Thursday, the 18th of June, Leader of Opposition, Mr. Aaron McLean, the member for West Bay North, Mr. Bernard Bush, and I had a meeting with the governor. I asked Mr. McLean to organize a meeting as I was receiving complaints about discrimination in the civil service. During that conversation, I made it clear to the governor that I was against any form of discrimination. I made reference to a post that I made on Facebook where I spoke about discrimination against members of the LGBTQ community from black people, and that we should all strive for zero tolerance to any form of discrimination. Madam Speaker, I hope when the governor tells people about my zero tolerance for discrimination, that he tells them that my meeting was about the discrimination in the civil service that is wholly his constitutional responsibility under Section 55. It would be really sad if he only speaks about the LGBTQ issue and not the black people issue. Madam Speaker, while on this issue, I want to touch on an issue within the civil rights movements that has always bothered me. As you know, many Caymanians and residents are familiar with the likes of Frederick Douglass, Marcus Garvey, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, Medgar Evers, Barbara Jordan, Thurgood Marshall, Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X, the late John Lewis, and of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. While the names that I mentioned was a brief summary of the long list, there's one name I would like to speak about that is often forgotten in the civil rights movement, and that is a gentleman by the name of Bayard Rustin. Mr. Rustin was an expert organizer of human rights protests. In 1958, he played an important role in coordinating a march in Alderson, England, in which 10,000 attendees demonstrated against nuclear weapons. Mr. Rustin met the young civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in the 1950s and began working with Dr. King as an organizer and strategist in 1955. Excuse me, sorry. He taught Dr. King about Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolent resistance and advised him on the tactics of civil disobedience. He assisted Dr. King with the boycott of segregated buses in Montgomery, Alabama in 1956. Most famously, Mr. Rustin was a key figure in the organization of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, at which Dr. King delivered his legendary I Have a Dream speech on August 28, 1963. In 2013, Madam Speaker, 50 years after the March on Washington and 26 years after his death, Mr. Rustin was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. The first time I became aware of Mr. Rustin was when I came across one of his quotes that caught my attention. The quote was simple, it was short. It says, "The only way to reduce ugliness in the world is to reduce it in yourself." Madam Speaker, I had to take a long look on this issue and an even longer look at myself. Just last Sunday, Madam Speaker, I sent out my weekly message in which I spoke about my own challenges and struggles in adjusting to university life. Some of the respondents were my friends from college, and it reminded me of a time in my life that seriously made me question my approach to the gay issue. Madam Speaker, as I said earlier, I received my secondary education in Kingston, Jamaica, at Calabar High School. Jamaica's position on homosexuality is well documented, and in the 1980s, during my high school years, it was very well documented. Madam Speaker, during the 1990s, I attended Pace University in New York City, one of the most liberal cities in the United States. At Pace, I was a member of the Caribbean Students Association. Each year, we would host the biggest concert on campus called Cariculture. That was a tradition at Pace, and the budget every year was between $40,000 to $50,000. And we'd bring in the top soca or calypso, or the top reggae or dancehall artists, whatever it was for that year. $40,000 to $50,000 in college campus is a lot of money to get a lot of things done in the 90s. And the budget for our event came out of something called the Student Activities Fee that was controlled by the Student Government Association. Long story short, Madam Speaker, one particular year, the Student Government Association cut their budget by more than half. While I don't remember the exact reason given word for word, I still remember that it was the first time that we in the Caribbean Student Association felt discriminated against when we realized that a substantial amount of money went to organizations that were dominated by white students. Madam Speaker, we Caribbean students in good Caribbean forms vowed that that injustice would not stand. And the Student Government Association was in charge of what student organization got, then we need to make sure that we have a voice in the Student Government Association. Madam Speaker, I can tell you that peer pressure is real, and that I felt it first. I know my peers asked me to run for president of Student Government Association. I was guaranteed their full support, and they'd worked to make sure that my running mate and I were elected. It was important that our Caribbean voice be heard. Well, Madam Speaker, when time campaign came around, half of them are gone. They abandoned my running mate and I and thought we couldn't win, and threw their support behind our opponents. But, Madam Speaker, you know which student organization stood with us? An organization by the name of Gallup, Gay and Lesbian Organization at Peace. And they worked tirelessly with us, organizing with us, and they also understood what we were fighting for, having been discriminated against themselves as a student organization. And Madam Speaker, I can tell you, when we won that year, a lot of us in the Caribbean Student Association had to reevaluate our dogmatic views over those who practice an alternative lifestyle that was different than ours. Truth be told, Madam Speaker, they were no different than my other friends. They were normal people. The only difference is that when they paid us a compliment, we dissected it and analyzed it a bit more, just to make sure that all was good. So if someone say, "Chris, you're looking good," I'm like, "What do you mean by that, bro?" And of course, we'd always tease them about it, because we also tell them that, you know, we know they can't multiply, they can only recruit. But of course, we'd always say that jokingly, and more in jest. Madam Speaker, black people living in America know discrimination firsthand. I went to school in America. I traveled for business in America. I vacationed in America. I know the look, and I have the stories, as do many other Caymanians and many other Caribbean nationals. When I was a regional head of the Department of Cable and Wireless, we had to travel between islands. We had to go via Miami. We had to make sure we dress a particular way so that we don't get detained for questioning, so that we can catch our connecting flights. I say this to say, Madam Speaker, that black people know discrimination, and the last people who should be discriminated against anyone is black people. With that said, Madam Speaker, I hope the governor understands where I was coming from and fixes the other discrimination issue that I raised with him within the civil service when we met.
Yes.
Now, Madam Speaker, I want to touch on a statement made by the Honorable Minister, a member for Georgetown North, the Minister of Commerce, and also by my colleague from Prospect this morning, when he mentioned that there was a time in our history when slavery was acceptable. Acceptable by who? The only people that found slavery acceptable were the people that were doing the slaving, not those that were enslaved. Do they honestly believe, Madam Speaker, that the slaves that were beaten, tortured, raped, and hung found slavery acceptable? Madam Speaker, usually I would let things like that slide, but I can't allow that one to slide. I don't want future generations to come back and read the answers and believe that in the year 2020, statements like that went unchallenged in this legislative assembly. So when they do see that statement, they can also see this one right behind it too, to let them know that there were people here that did not recognize those statements as being acceptable in 2020. At no time in the history of my people was slavery ever acceptable. Now, Madam Speaker, since when this issue of slavery, because a lot of people, not just here, but also in America, speak about the gay issue and compare it to the slavery issue. First of all, Madam Speaker, let's establish one thing. Slavery did not come about as a moral issue. Slavery came about because of an economic issue. People wanted to work. People wanted people to work for them and not pay them. And they did it by force. It's that simple. They wanted labor, and they wanted it cheap, and nothing beat cheap than free. Today, we may call it cheap labor, and here people still refer to it as working for slave wage. But that is the bottom line with slavery. They wanted cheap labor, and they wanted free labor. And the funny thing about it is, Madam Speaker, the abolishing of slavery wasn't a moral issue either. It was also done because of economic reasons. In the United States, the northern states, with their industrial machines and cold climate, could not compete with southern states that had year-round good weather, followed by cheap labor. While their machines break down in the north, the slaves in the south had to work even if they were sick. Unfortunately for the southern states, the northern states had more white voters, and as such, had more votes in Congress. Congress passed a law on January 31, 1865, outlawing slavery, and it was ratified on December 6, becoming the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. It had nothing to do about a moral issue. It was an economic issue. Does anyone honestly believe that all those Americans killed themselves in the Civil War because they want free black slaves? Really? Economics, Madam Speaker, economics, plain and simple. 32 years earlier, Madam Speaker, England had a similar issue, just like the US Congress. The British Parliament did something about it when they passed the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 that abolished slavery in most British colonies. The reason the British Parliament passed it was because their economy was struggling. The British plantations in the Caribbean had a monopoly on the British markets, but the British plantations couldn't compete with the larger plantation economies of Cuba and Brazil. The British merchants demanded an end to monopolies on the British market held by the Caribbean colonies and pushed for free trade. That's all it was. Brazil and Cuba had bigger plantations, more slaves, and were doing it cheaper and bigger. And because the plantations in the Caribbean had the monopoly to sell their goods in the UK market, and because they couldn't have the cheaper prices, that's all it was, Madam Speaker, nothing else. And those merchants tell them, say, listen, this monopoly needs to end, and the best way to end a monopoly was to end slavery. That's all it was. Destroy the plantation so they could get the cheap goods. That's all. Nothing moral about that. Again, plain and simple economics. They wanted cheaper prices. The Slavery Abolition Act received royal assent on August 28, 1833, and took effect on August 1, 1834. And that's why Emancipation Day is observed in Bahamas, Bermuda, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. Funny enough, Madam Speaker, at one point I believe that Cayman, like other Caribbean islands, used to also celebrate Emancipation Day as the 1st of August. Maybe that's something we need to look into and remind people when we celebrate days like those that slavery was never, ever acceptable within our history. And Madam Speaker, I just want to add one more piece of issue before I close this issue. Do you know where the British plantation turned to cheap labor after slavery was abolished? I can tell you. China and India. And I can tell you, Madam Speaker, the Chinese treatment in America was very, very ugly. It wasn't pretty. But that's another story for another time. Now, Madam Speaker, I want to turn my attention to what the Premier said off mic yesterday about repeating what I said to him. I'll go even further than what I said to him, Madam Speaker, because I know as a member of the opposition, anything I say to the members on the government side can be said publicly. I'm actually going to say to this honorable House today what I said to my own colleagues in private when we were discussing this bill. And I want to make it clear, and I'm going to say this right now, and again, like I said, I'm just used to saying what the hell I want to say. If I was living in America, I would support gay marriage. And I said it to them. Why? Because there are benefits you get from being married that you will never get as an unmarried person. That is the way it works in America. America prides itself on promoting equality and that everyone is equal under the law. Thus the reason why Lady Justice wears a blindfold. America also believes in the separation of powers and also the separation of church and state. The separation of church and state promotes the concept that everyone should be free to practice their religious views, free of political interference. Everyone can practice their religious views free from political interference. But there's also another side to that coin, Madam Speaker. People are also free to practice their political views without religious interference. That is the other flip side that nobody speaks about much. And people need to understand, Madam Speaker, the reason why that was a big thing in the United States at the time is they were setting up their constitution and see what was happening in Europe and understanding the different crusades that were fought through the church and because of religion. They did not want that in the new republic. They did not want the Pope having the power that he had in his new republic. And that is why it took America until 1960 to elect their first Catholic president, which was actually JFK. That is how long the U.S. had with the issue of being afraid of the Catholics and the influence of the Pope, just to put it in context. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, in the United States Constitution, other than Article 7, where it mentions in the year of our Lord, nowhere in the United States Constitution makes any reference to God. Although, to be fair, the Creator is included in their Declaration of Independence. I bring this up, Madam Speaker, to highlight the difference between the United States Constitution and our Constitution here in the Cayman Islands. The United States people chose that document to govern them, and that is their sovereign right to do so. Equally, we in the Cayman Islands chose this document, and we voted for it back in May 2009, 7,045 votes. That represented 62.66% of the votes cast that year. And here's what our Constitution says as a preamble. The people of the Cayman Islands, recalling the events that have shaped their history and made them what they are, and acknowledging their distinct history, culture, and Christian heritage, and its enduring influence and contribution in shaping the spiritual, moral, and social values that have guided their development and brought peace, prosperity, and stability to those islands through the vision, forbearance, and leadership of their people, who are loyal to Her Majesty the Queen, affirm their intention to be a God-fearing country based on traditional Christian values, tolerant of other religions and belief. I didn't say that, Madam Speaker. This document that governs us did. And the reason why I say that, Madam Speaker, is that the people of the Cayman Islands chose back in 2009 that they wanted to be governed by Christian principles and Christian values. The United States did not choose to go that route, and thus the reason the Supreme Court can make the ruling that it did. And to put things also in context, Madam Speaker, people need to remember that in the 90s under President Clinton, the American Congress, which is both the House of Representatives and the Senate, passed a veto-proof bill on the Defense of Marriage Act that Clinton had to sign, even though he called it a waste of time. The American politicians did that. It is only after the Supreme Court struck that bill down did gay marriage become legal in the United States. But let no one kid yourself. The last time the United States Congress dealt with this bill of marriage, they voted for more than 2/3, which is a veto-proof majority to say we want marriage to look this way. That is the difference. The Supreme Court basically got up and said, in our Constitution, we have the separation of the church and the state. We chose not to do that here in the Cayman Islands. We chose to make our Christian values and our Christian heritage our guiding principles, and this is the document that governs us. So when people get up and say that the U.S. is doing this, of course the U.S. can do it. Their Constitution allows them to do it because they decide they're not going to be guided by Christian principles. I would love to read what the UK Constitution is. The only problem is the UK don't have a Constitution. So I can't tell you what they say. But this, what I can tell you is what they say. And this, Madam Speaker, is what governs us in this House, and what governs this country, and what governs the people of the Cayman Islands. This Constitution with our Christian values. I didn't say it. The people of the Cayman Islands voted for this. Madam Speaker, the issue of marriage, the people of the Cayman Islands also voted for that too. And I'm going to read what it says in the Constitution. Government shall respect the right of every unmarried man and woman of marriageable age, as determined by law, freely to marry a person of the opposite sex and found a family. This is what the Constitution of the Cayman Islands says. It is clear, it is distinct, and more importantly, it is what 62.66% of the people who voted in the 2009 election said that they wanted. And Madam Speaker, I will agree with the Premier when he said, and he quoted JFK, that says, while you can disagree with the law, you cannot disobey the law. Well, Madam Speaker, marriage is defined in our Constitution, and while people may disagree with it, they can't disobey it. But ironically, Madam Speaker, speaking of JFK, in his inaugural address, he also said, those who sought power by riding the back of the tiger ended up inside. Madam Speaker, I will tell you that this issue bothers me to my core. While I've had many conversations on this issue, Madam Speaker, and I can tell you I've got representations from just under 400, just under 450 members of the Boddington West community. 3 conversations that stood out in my mind, and those are the ones I had with my 20-year-old son, my wife, and my mother. I can tell you what my 20-year-old son said, who was going to school in the UK. And I think I can safe to say that he have a lot more tomorrows than yesterdays. The issue for him is neither here nor there to him. As far as he is concerned, gay marriage should be legal. People should be free to marry who they want, and what they do with their lives is nobody's business. Exact words to me, something along that line. And that's fine. I grew him to be his own thing and think his own way, you know, and it is what it is. My wife, on the other hand, will tell you that people are unique and should be free to be themselves. But she will also tell you that we have a lot of work to do before we get there, and that anytime someone feels forced to do something, their natural instinct is to rebel. In other words, Madam Speaker, we need to find a way to find a balance. My mother, on the other hand, now, was very solid in her belief, a church elder. I tell you what, she is my grandmother, Miss Mack's daughter. And I can tell you one thing, I think what Miss Mack views on this is legendary, and if she was alive today, they probably would charge her for some crime if she was to put her expressions out there, and I will leave it at that. So the Premier is right, Madam Speaker. The day will come when the younger generation may feel different than many people today. And guess what, Madam Speaker? They will have the option to change it when that time comes. That is why we have parliamentary sovereignty. A current parliament cannot bind a future parliament. They can make that decision at that time if the public perception shifts. It took America over 200 years from the founding of their republic to reach there. It took England over 1,000 years to get there from the time they've been around. And people expect this young country just to overnight. I think as the Minister for Health and also the Minister of Education pointed out how recent these things are in those countries that are more than 1,000 years old, and they just expect overnight willy-nilly for the Cayman Islands to move there. That is not what happened. Madam Speaker, in our Constitution, many times we use the term spiritual, moral, and social values. Those are things that are very difficult to legislate. How do you legislate morality? How do you legislate spirituality? And how do you legislate social values? The only people that can decide those issues are the people of the Cayman Islands, and they do it via this legislative assembly. Madam Speaker, many times yesterday and even today, we heard that the court said this or the court said that. And the UK will do this or the UK will do that. But at no time I heard them say that the people of the Cayman Islands will do this, or the people of the Cayman Islands will do that, or that the people of the Cayman Islands want this. Have they forgotten that it was the people of the Cayman Islands that put us here? They are the ones we should be worried about. I can tell you right now, no disrespect to the people on that side referring to the courts. It does not matter to me standing here what any judge think. The only people opinion that matters to me is the people of Bordentown West primarily and the people of the Cayman Islands. And I can tell you one thing, Madam Speaker, I have never yet gone to my bed once worrying about what the UK government will do or this or that or whatever. We have a lot of issues and a lot of challenges for our own people to occupy my mind. Madam Speaker, we put this bill out on June 26, and I sent it out the same day I received it along with the governor's statement. And on July 27th, we started debating this bill. Do we honestly believe, Madam Speaker, that between June 26 and July 27, that this was sufficient time for such an important bill, especially when considering the other issues that are also of great importance in the community, and where people are focused on those challenges and are somewhat distracted? Where was the input from the people in this process? Madam Speaker, I can ask one question. Who says this bill is even a solution? It is my understanding that the Legislative Assembly doesn't discuss matters that are before the courts. As far as I'm aware, there's an appeal with the Privy Council. If the government loses that appeal, then guess what? This is a waste of time. Gay marriage become legal. So this bill don't mean anything if the government loses. And if the government wins, well, guess what? It says our Constitution is correct and marriage is between a man and a woman. So what does this bill do? In essence, Madam Speaker, this bill answers the question that nobody asked. Nobody's asking this question that this bill is answering. We're not here debating domestic partnership. It's not domestic partnership that's on its way to the Privy Council. It's gay marriage. So win or lose, this bill does nothing. It solves nothing. Madam Speaker, this Legislative Assembly, our institution of democracy, was created because we recognize that there will be differences, disagreements, dissent, and discord. And this Legislative Assembly was designed for us to discuss and debate those issues so that we may find consensus. At the end of the day, we govern by consensus. So, Madam Speaker, what will be our consensus? As I stated before, I have a zero tolerance on any form of discrimination. If there's a benefit that I, as a married Caymanian, is getting, that other Caymanians are not getting because they're not married, we need to fix that. I don't want it to be said that I'm getting something that someone else can't get, regardless of their marital status, regardless of their sexual preference. And I think that is what we should be striving for. Equality under the law for everybody. And I believe this is a time for us where we should have created a select committee. And if we had to go through every single piece of legislation, piece by piece, 294 major pieces of legislation, I believe, to be exact, and go through them line by line. If there's a change we need to make in the stamp duty law that allow certain people to transfer for love and natural affection, if they'll never be married or whatever, I'm fine for that. Because at the end of the day, we can't be living in a Cayman where some of us can get benefits under the law that others can't get. And this have nothing to do with whether they are members of the LGBT community, single. Some people that even practice abstinence. What about them? You see, Madam Speaker, the issue that we also need to be wary of when we start opening this kind of door. Today, it may be domestic partnership, but I can tell you what is right around the corner: the issue of abortion. And let me tell you, that is a whole different level of fight. Once we open this door, I am happy that the UK have made this a devolved issue for us as a society to decide when and where we want to progress. That is the Cayman I want to live in, one where everybody has equal access to everything, regardless of their marital status, regardless of their sex, and regardless of their sexual preference. This is what we should be striving for. This is not a parliamentary democracy. This is a constitutional democracy governed by a constitution. And if we want to move away from the principles within our constitution, then we need to get that mandate from the people that we were elected to serve and were elected to represent. Madam Speaker, I'll be the first to tell you that something needs to be done, because there are benefits that I will get as a married person that some Caymanians will never get. And that, I will tell you, is not right. Madam Speaker, I also accept that the world is changing. But I also accept that we are unique and that there was a time when the whole world was changing and the Cayman Islands were the island that time forgot. Maybe that is what made us unique. Maybe that is what made us distinct. We said in our Constitution that our Christian heritage helped shape our spiritual, moral, and social values that brought peace, prosperity, and stability to our islands. First, we had to give up our uniqueness, and we wanted to build a port because everybody else was doing it. Madam Speaker, now we want to give up our uniqueness and look at domestic partnership because everybody is doing it. Now we must give up our uniqueness and accept this bill because the court told us to do it. Or we must now give up our uniqueness, accept this bill, because if we don't do it, the UK will do it for us. Well, Madam Speaker, history has taught us one thing. We can always trust the UK government to do what is in their best interests. They have the power to legislate for us, and we were recently reminded of that. They did not do it. And we had the sanctions and I think the anti-money laundering bill. That's living proof. The governor also has the power to make legislation that bypasses this legislative assembly. He didn't use it. Why? Because this is a devolved issue. It is up for the people of this country to decide on that issue. The last correspondence that I'm aware of that we received from the UK government on this issue, if their position has changed, maybe the Premier can let us know when he wraps up. Madam Speaker, in this Legislative Assembly, I am referred to as the member for Bordentown West. Outside this Legislative Assembly, I am just Christopher Saunders. It was Christopher Saunders who campaigned for this seat. It was Christopher Saunders that was on the ballot. And it was Christopher Saunders that was elected to represent the views of the people of Bordentown West. And I can tell you right now, regardless of my personal opinion, that I'm here to represent the majority view of the people of Bordentown West. Madam Speaker, I don't know how this vote will go, but I'm willing to accept the outcome regardless either way. But one thing is for sure, Madam Speaker, there'll be people, our people, that may not like the outcome. And I will ask members of this honorable House not to engage in a victory lap, but let us work on healing the divide that this issue has caused. This is a conscience vote. Our conscience is shaped by our personal experiences, our personal challenges, and our personal triumphs. In this House, as per the Constitution, we're tasked with passing laws for peace, order, and good government to uplift the lives of all Caymanians. Not some Caymanians, all Caymanians. And Madam Speaker, the one verse more than anything that last week my mother sent me to remind me, and she knows one of my favorite, and maybe it was just timeliness or whatever, was 2 Chronicles 7:14 that says, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear their sins, I will heal their sins, I will heal their land, forgive their sins. Madam Speaker, we have to find a way to ensure that every Cayman is equal under the law, regardless of their marital sex or sexual preferences. And the best way to do that is by looking to our Constitution, which starts out with 6 mere words: the people of the Cayman Islands. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The House will suspend for 15 minutes. I ask all members to return to the chamber promptly at 6:10, 6:15. 6:10.
Chapter has dealt with that, and